What up? What up?
So, dude,
What's going on?
I keep wanting to redo that intro, but every time I see it, I'm like, this is kind of hard.
Yeah, I don't really know. I know you said back in the day you might have had like some ideas for how to improve it, but I don't know. At this point, I kind of like it too much to want to
Fuck,
change it.
fuck with it, yeah,
Yeah, it's like if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
for real.
You know. What's good, man?
Did a speed run of some Halloween movies over the last like what week and a half.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't I don't remember exactly when I assigned you this list, so but you definitely banged some shit out in a short amount of time, which is good.
yeah, I feel like we talked about it probably 3 weeks ago, and then it wasn't. I didn't really get to watching any of them for a few days, and then just kind of like ran through them. It was dope. I'm very excited to talk about it. Marcus tried. You've tried to like be like, "Yo, how was this?" And I was like, "Nah, like I'm not gonna tell you shit until we help on the stream."
Yeah, I wasn't looking for anything like super in depth. I just kind of wanted like base assessment, and you didn't even give me that, which in hindsight, I'm glad you didn't because that's
Yeah,
gonna make all of this discussion even better. So Mud Nelson's in here.
it's good, man.
First one in here. What's good, bro? Good to see you in here. Um, so I figure we'll give it a little bit more time, let some more people join in, and we'll just kind of riff. Dude, what else has been going on? You've been playing like some Control and stuff still?
Dude, I'm playing. So I'm playing Control. I'm playing Resident Evil 2 that I'm dragging my feet on because it's bugging.
I
Um,
understand. I know what that's like.
I started playing Tunic, which is dope, and I still don't know how I'm able to play it. Like, even my Xbox gives me that little exclamation point where it's like, hey, you can't play this game for whatever reason, but it lets me play it, which has been cool.
Yeah, that
Um,
really confused me when you told me about that.
super weird. A dope game though.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like because even like because PlayStation has like a PlayStation Plus thing where they'll give you a free game every month.
Hmm.
Um, and Xbox does that too, but I haven't kept up with it. I have no idea, um, like if that's still a thing. What's up,
Yeah.
Eli? Thanks for joining us tonight, man.
What's good, Eli?
Um, yeah, dude, I've been trying to like catch up on my 2024 watch list. I have like a list that I keep on Letterboxd of like movies that I want to definitely check out before the year's over, and it helps me to like stay organized.
Hmm.
So I watched this movie called Strange Darling, which I really dug. Um,
Hmm.
I did it. The video for that is up on my channel right now. If anyone's curious about it.
That's in theaters though, right? It's like a new one.
No, that went to theaters,
Mm.
but it never came to my area, so
Mm.
I had to check it out on VOD once the price drops to something reasonable.
Got you.
It was worth the wait. I really enjoyed Strange Darling, so yeah, if you're interested in seeing my thoughts on that, check that out. And then I watched this other movie on Netflix last night called It's What's Inside, and let me tell you, that cracked my top 10 of the year.
Oh shit. Okay.
It's a crazy ass fucking movie, dude. It like
Oh, I just saw the poster for it on your story.
yeah, dude. I
Yeah.
don't even
Okay.
want to tell you shit about it, but you should abso-fucking-lutely watch it.
Okay. That's a
Like
strong cosign.
it would really like I would love it if you watched it so we could talk about it because I really feel like you would like it.
Okay.
Um I also need to watch I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Um
Oh, you do need to watch
Definitely going
that.
to watch that. Alex recommended it to me again at work today.
Wow, me and Alex both recommended it.
That's what I said. I said if you two are both recommending it, then I need to see it.
Strong.
But dude, yeah, it's What's Inside. I'm definitely gonna do a video on that one. Um, Movie was insane, really, really good.
Is it
I
a? I don't even want to. I was gonna ask that.
no,
I don't
you're
want
not.
to ask anything.
No,
Yeah.
you don't. Yeah, I'm not telling you shit.
All right. Cool.
Eli and Gavin are just talking in the chat. I wanted to see. This is like a side scroller. They made a Halloween Ash like side scroller game. Um,
Like a
kind of
beat 'em
like
up.
yeah, like in the style of like those Ninja Turtle games.
Like a beat 'em. Oh, it's
Yeah.
dope.
So I kind of want to check that out. That seems cool. Let me know how that is, man. Um, Old Restless, what's up, man? Never seen you in here before, but welcome. Good to have you.
Welcome,
Huck,
dude.
what's up, bro? Huck is the man. Haven't talked to Huck in a bit, but
What's
really
up,
good
Huck?
to see you here. He's a really cool guy. Yeah. Have I ever seen you guys ever seen Possessor? Have you seen Possessor? I have.
No.
This is Brandon Cronenberg's like second film, I think. It's pretty dope. I need to watch it again. It's pretty good though. Very like violent and stuff.
Dumb question. Cronenberg body horror guy?
Correct.
Got it. I will
Correct.
continuously oust myself as like not a very good
You're
horror film fan in
it's not
general on
yeah, I mean
on the
you're
channel.
I like that dynamic though. That's
It
what's
works.
interesting is
Yeah.
our dynamic. Possessor's good, man. I want to see that again actually. Brandon Cronenberg is David Cronenberg's son, and he
Oh
makes
wow.
films now. He did Infinity Pool from a year or two ago. Remember
Okay.
did you ever see any like ads or anything for that?
I remember the trailer looked dope. I never saw the movie though.
Yeah, Infinity Pool was solid. I enjoyed that.
Mia Goth?
Correct.
Yes.
Everyone's just shooting the shit in here. Holland Oates, what's up, brother?
God, the PFP so good.
Thank you for being here. All right, we got a decent amount of people in here, so I'm gonna play this intro video that I whipped up, and then we'll get into like the topic of tonight's show.
Roll it.
So here we go. Rolling.
Yeah, the thumbnail at the end's great.
So, that is the intro video. I whipped that up today before work. So yeah,
Ooh.
tonight for our Halloween special for Talks from the Shelf, which is this show that you're watching right now, um, we decided that before we even knew what this show would be, I kind of gave Tyler some horror homework. I came up with like 5 movies that if he was going to watch any 5 this October, like he should definitely watch these, right? And they all wound up being like essentially first time watches, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So what we're gonna do is we decided that we could make it the Is It a Masterpiece show, where these movies may or may not be considered masterpieces by most people. So we're just gonna kind of go movie by movie. There's 5 of them here, and we got some different criteria that we're gonna kind of judge them by. And we're gonna have you guys weigh in the audience, and kind of I'm most interested because have not yet gotten Tyler's feedback on any of these movies. So these are movies that I'm pretty familiar with. Some of them I really, really love. Some of them I think are, really good. So I'm curious. He knows how I feel about these movies basically because I recommended them, but I still don't know what he thought. So that's going to kind of be where the interesting discussions come from.
Yeah, and obviously all of this is very subjective, and I have lots of gaps in my movie knowledge. So anything that I'm missing, anything that we're like, if you're like this guy's fucking dumb, like let us know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean it's fun enough to kind of just discuss these things, and I think that's what makes our dynamic so interesting is we're not too like horror heads like so your takes are very fresh and they're very unbiased by like outside because I kind of live in that world, so I'm always consuming lots of different you know, lots of different opinions and stuff. So I kind of know generally
Mm,
speaking how the horror community at large feels about these, but you're
mm,
not a part of that. So you're I mean you could be if you wanted to, but that's not what I mean. But that's not something that
yeah, yeah.
you are sort of consuming through osmosis constantly.
Gotcha.
Um Thanks, Huck. Yeah, it was a little too long. I had a lot of clips in there that I wanted to get in there, so it was a little longer than I usually make them. So hopefully that wasn't like annoying for some of you guys. So yeah. Let's see. Ooh, we said we were gonna do it like this.
Like the order of when they were released.
Yeah, so let me order them real quick.
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Build on that context.
we're gonna start with Night of the Living Dead from 1968, I believe.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
68. So we decided we're going to do these in like sort of chronological release order. So, Night of the Living Dead. I'm going to let you start, man. For pretty much all of these, I'm going to let you start it off. I know you have some notes ready. So,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead and take it away.
Oh man. Okay, so this one, lots of thoughts on Night of the Living Dead. Um, Overarching theme is that it was very surprising. Um, I it was there's a lot more depth and like I don't want to say nuance, but like just it was more complicated than I thought it was going to be. In my head, I've seen some stills from Night of the Living Dead, right? And like
It's
I,
super like that's a movie that through osmosis like has seeped into your brain. You probably seen that one
yeah.
shot of her like on the tombstone a bunch and like you know like she's like on
Yeah.
that tombstone. Yeah, in the beginning of the film.
And the kid, the daughter, who's like in the basement for most
That
of the movie.
daughter's pretty iconic. Yeah, I have a poster of her. You can actually see it right here,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
right there.
Yeah,
That's
needless to say, we're gonna spoil the shit out of all these films. So if you haven't seen them,
yeah, yeah. That is
I
definitely.
assume people have seen
I
them.
I assume most people have seen these. So yeah, just kind of give me your overall thoughts on the movie, and then we're gonna kind of go by category real quick and just kind of discuss them.
Yeah, much more surprising, more complex than I thought. Definitely, actually, like more intense and like scarier and darker. Like I I assumed I had seen some stills from it right over the years, and I assumed some people get locked in a house, zombie apocalypse, maybe one or two of them die, they fend off some zombies, and eventually they get saved, right? Which is
Hmm.
not what happens at all.
No, not at all. It's
um,
a super bleak ending.
it's
How about
super,
that ending? You
dude. It's
just
super bleak. The ending almost feels not rushed because it's not, but it's purposefully very like there's some like very strong, I want to say racial, not undertones, but just like a theme there.
yes.
That is very purposefully just like it just ends.
Yeah.
Um, and there's that theme, and there's also I did some like I was doing some researching as after I finished watching it and like looking at the year that it came out, and I could be pulling uh, too long of a thread here, but this was also the same year the Vietnam War was going on at this time.
There was a lot of unrest in society at this point.
Vietnam War is going on at the time, and 68 was peak of like that violence, and Nam was the first like televised war. And there's a big so like people were like actually at home like taking in all of that. And
Yeah,
there's a
it was
big
the first time
theme,
people were like seeing stuff like that.
yeah, and like in real time. And there's a big theme in I remember when they're in the house and the people come up from the basement for the first time, and Mr. Cooper? Who's the who's the douchey? Yeah, Mr. Cooper, the douchey guy in the basement, comes up.
Oh, that guy who keeps wanting to
Harry.
go in the basement. Yeah, it's Cooper.
Yeah. Yeah, he comes up and he hears that the radio is on, and he gets like real wound up about the radio being on. And it was like to an extent that it was like kind of interesting. And then his wife is like, "Oh, there's a radio, there's a TV." So there's kind of that theme. But yes, there's like a lot more going on in that film than I was expecting. Um, and Yeah, it was great. And there's a part at the end when they're interviewing the like chief or whoever, where it's kind of those news clips, and he gives us like what has become like the canon explanation of what zombies are, which was like blew my mind. He was like in 30 seconds, he was like, yeah, like they're very slow, they don't move very well. If you want to kill them, you got to shoot them in the head. And I was like, oh, this is like the origin point
This is it.
of
It can all be traced back to Night of the Living Dead.
yeah, there's like a couple zombie movies that happened before this,
But
but
they
this
were all
seems
they weren't they were there were like African like voodoo
yeah.
things like that where they weren't this iteration of zombie. Even though they don't actually call them zombies in this film, they call them ghouls, which I just find funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um but yeah, and believe it or not, man, the actor his name's Dwayne Jones who plays Ben,
Mm-hmm.
he was not cast because of his race. In the
Huh.
script, George Romero has always said he got that job because he was just the best actor to audition.
He was the best actor in the film
He was
too. He
never
really carried.
he's really good.
Yeah.
And he's not he was it was never supposed to be like that. As obviously in there, but
Wow.
it was kind of sort of I don't know. I don't want to say happy accident, but yeah, it
Yeah.
was just kind of serendipitous. So let's we kind of touched on a bit of this, and we don't have to stay on these super long. But you can just kind of give me like the quick sort of what'd you think of how are the characters, that sort of thing, and we'll kind of go down the list.
Yeah, characters, super mixed bag in terms of the actual characters themselves and the acting.
Yeah,
Ben, thank God for Ben. Ben shows up.
Ben
Ben
carried. Yeah,
Ben fucking stands on business. He's like, nah, like I got this. Barbara was interesting, right? Barbara, the main
yeah.
girl.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Yeah, she she it feels like they were trying to do something interesting with her being like traumatized. Part of me wanted to be like, oh, it almost going back to the Vietnam War thing, like her brother died, and I was like, oh, this almost seems like it's trying to be metaphorical for like somebody who lost their brother or loved
Yeah,
one as a soldier, because she kept saying like, oh, like they got my brother or whatever. But for so much in the movie, she's just kind of like weirdly just kind of just like spaced out. But you're like, you're supposed to be like,
she's very passive.
yeah,
People really criticize that aspect of this film. I think it's if anything is to be criticized here, it's sort of how in the modern day we look at her character and we're like, well, yeah, she's like the typical sort of damsel in distress. Not even really like the final girl isn't a thing yet at this point, and
right.
she's just very
And she's
passive and
not
like
anyway.
she's
Yeah.
just letting things happen to her. Not doesn't have a ton of agency, and that's why in the Tom Savini remake from 1990, Barbara is like she's like Sarah Connor. She's like a badass.
Mm.
Um, Barbara had CTE from getting punched. Uh, very possibly, very possibly.
Okay.
um, so yeah, that is one thing that people do comment on is sort of
Mhm.
how her role is sort of a non-role. Like she kind of does snap out of it at one
Mhm.
point, and like she helps Ben like find some wood and stuff to help barricade the house and stuff. So
Yeah.
she does eventually kind of come out of it, but ultimately she's not. But you have to think about the time that this came out in. So I don't watch this and expect her to be like this ass kicking. Like she's in shock.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
She's in
Yeah. Yeah.
shock, and that's sort of how that's just kind of realistically that's probably what would happen.
Yeah. It's
Um,
like
so
pretty traumatic day for her.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Did you have any other thoughts on like the characters? I will say I like this. This really is the blueprint because like every zombie movie from here on out kind of follows that role of like there's that one guy who's like making trouble and is ultimately going to fuck everything up. There's the one
Internally,
there's the
yes.
one dude who's like in his normal life would be like just a normal dude, but once shit goes down, he's like the leader and he takes charge. Very unassuming kind of leader. Doesn't just wants what's best for the group, like isn't going to compromise anything.
Yeah, yeah.
There's like the young scrappy couple. There's like the Barbara character. So like this really is like the blueprint as far as characters go, like um
Yeah,
for every zombie film to come.
yeah, and I think I was surprised by that, that like there was very much like that internal struggle, and it wasn't just like a one-dimensional like, okay, we have a group of people, they're trying to fend off zombies. Like that was happening, but then also internally there was like maybe even more friction than there was between them and the zombies. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Very interesting.
really it's very impressive because I thought the same thing. I only watched this for the first time like 2 years ago.
Mm,
It was a movie that I had seen through osmosis and shit as well. So I'm always impressed whenever I watch a movie from like the 40s, 50s, or 60s, and I find it not boring. Like
yes. Yeah.
it's as much of like a whatever you want to call me, like cinephile, film bro, whatever. Like oftentimes I struggle to get through movies of that era if I'm not in that mind space.
100%.
Night of the Living Dead is like it's enthralling from like beginning to end. It's really well paced, and I it's just an easy watch, and it's
Yep.
so fun to just kind of see where like Shaun of the Dead and the Dawn of the Dead remake from Zack Snyder, which was the first one that I saw back in like 2004. Obviously, I hadn't seen the '78 one yet, which is the sequel to this movie.
I saw Dawn of the Dead a bunch of times. The
The
right
Zack
in the
the Zack
mall.
the Zack Snyder one, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I see. I saw that a
yeah.
bunch
Like
of times.
those movies were big for us when we were younger,
Yep.
and then you go back and watch Night of the Living Dead, and it's like, oh, I
This
understand.
is
Like
this is it. Yeah,
I understand where this all came from. John Doe Juggalo, what's up, brother?
yeah.
Thanks for being here. I also forgot to highlight Laren is also here. Thank you, Laren.
What's good, Larry?
And my boy Jersey Jerry, what's good? But
609 represent.
thank you all for coming out, man. This is good. So yeah, those are the characters. Did you have anything else to add to that?
Now we'll hit on other stuff as we go through here.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to mood and atmosphere.
Yeah, love this. The shitty film quality, definitely more of a feature here than a bug. The sound, some of the sound design is crazy.
Yeah.
Just like very, not even experimental, just like, and not even industrial, but just like metallic grinding noises that happen.
Yeah.
It's almost a melody, but it's not. And then there's a large chunk of the film that just has a cricket going off.
Dude, I thought it was like because in my room, I'm in the basement and I have crickets outside my window
Yeah,
constantly. So it was literally like I was like, is that the film or is this like diegetic or like crickets right now? I was getting
dude,
like a
it's
4D experience.
diegetic crickets. No, and it's so good because it's so unsettling and so annoying and just so like you're like
Kind of
ah.
puts you in that environment with them.
Yeah, yeah, all that was great. There's something else that really adds to the mood and atmosphere is the scene that they really take a while to. Oh, this is the other zombie establishing thing, is them being like flesh eating.
Yeah.
And you could tell they knew that that scene was like important to like really drive home the fact that like these are zombie or ghouls. These are zombies, and like this is like a whole
Yeah.
thing that you should be scared of because they really had these dudes just like eating barbecue or
Yeah.
whatever. There are a couple shots where one of them looked at the camera real quick, but they used it that I really liked. Um, but
Yeah.
because it's just like some dudes eating barbecue in the woods at night. But yeah, they nailed that.
Yeah. You
And
watch that stuff now and it's like very tame by comparison, but you got to imagine like in '68 that would have been like some shocking shit.
Yeah, I was trying to put myself in those shoes. Really can't, obviously, but like I was like, okay, like at the time my dad was 8. And so like my dad as an 8-year-old, what like knowing the context of like who he is and what he grew up with, what would that have been like? And like that had to have been insane. Like I'm sure people were like up in arms of like this being a thing.
Yeah, it was definitely I want to say very influential horror film at the time.
Definitely.
Did you have any other thoughts on the mood and the atmosphere?
Nah, I think they nailed it. For what, especially for the time. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, I like the setting and the house and stuff. Um,
Yeah.
I think it's
Um,
really I think it's really effective. Again, lays the blueprint. Like you see that so often in later zombie films. Like people hold up in a house. In the second one, it's a mall.
yeah.
But it's just that idea of like, okay, this is our sanctuary, and like we got to figure out what's going on.
And I think how quickly the plot gets into motion also kind of adds to that mood of like, oh, okay, like there is no breathing room here. Like they're just
Yeah,
like there, they're at the cemetery at the beginning, and usually you kind of like ease into it, and they're like, this is what's going on, get ready. And this was like, nope. The first other guy you see who isn't a main character, just already a zombie.
already a zombie. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They really get you right into it, man. Oh, I
Hmm.
like the lightning strikes in the cemetery early on. Like right
Mm.
when shit starts going down, there's like a lightning storm going on.
There's that,
It's
and
a cool
and
effect.
yeah, and her brother essentially just like is completely foreshadowing it, like right from the jump. He's like, "They're gonna get you,"
Yeah,
and
and
then
then
they
like
literally,
literally a moment later, he's like, "There's one now," and they think it's just like a homeless guy walking through the cemetery, I guess.
and then he just gets domed.
And she's
Yeah.
like trying to like walk by him, like all mad awkward, and he's like, "Oh," and she's like, "Oh fuck!" It's just like, "Oh, all right," and then it's just all gas, no brakes from there.
It really is. Yeah.
All right, so moving on to story, we kind of covered this already.
Yeah.
Just like the kind of quintessential blueprint for every zombie film ever made after. There's been innovation and stuff, but like these are like the core tenets that you sort of have to abide by.
Yeah, and just super quickly, I do think
Oh,
again, like I think that they. No, you're good. I do think that it was more story than I assumed it was going to be, especially with like as you get into the latter half and they're talking about the news component becomes a big thing, and they're like, you guys
yeah.
got to get to these safe places. They have like the sheriff and like his whole squad going through, trying to figure out why this is happening, how they're dealing with it, and kind of just like gave a lot of color to like the larger event that was happening, and like I just didn't think they were gonna do that, and it made it all feel much more much more real. And like the ending with like there's all the still photographs at the end where
Yeah, and the way like
um
they like and then they like zoom out and like show you what's happening. It's
yeah,
so visceral, like the way like they all have like
yes,
meat hooks and they're just like and they just like spear Dwayne, who's been our boy the whole movie. And yeah, it's just super unceremonious, but it's very bleak and I admire that, and especially in a horror film from that era
yeah, I was not expecting
because
that at all.
yeah, like when you just go off on a note like that, like that's not common. Like movies back then like had to have I feel like it was almost like a mandate, like you had to have like a happy ending,
Hmm.
I mean, and I mean, I'm sure there were obviously exceptions, but like especially in like the 40s and 50s, like everything was like, you had to sort of hit certain check marks, otherwise like you just weren't you were considered like an extremist or something.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go into the scares. This one we can talk about just briefly. Obviously this one's super subjective, and I'm personally pretty desensitized. I've seen a lot of messed up horror movies. You got to figure how old this is. Like, is this a scary movie to me? Like, is it going to give me nightmares? No. But like all the things when you account for the time that it was released in the movie, like they're all pretty this movie definitely pushes the envelope in terms of like what you can show on screen. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm. That, and I do think the especially again given the time, the end where the Coopers go back down into the basement and get killed by their daughter. And
That would
like
have been super fucking messed up for 68.
Yeah, and even us, like now, like we like I know how zombies work, right? Like you get
Right.
bit, you turn into a zombie. And I think for us, we're quicker to catch on to that in this film because we know that.
For
And I think at
sure.
the time, people for the very first time were having to kind of do that math and be like, "Oh, wait, like does that mean the daughter is a zombie?" And me the whole time, I'm like, "Yo, your daughter is a fucking zombie. Watch out."
Yeah.
And but so then for like the parents to go and like not just get killed at the end by their daughter, but like they both kind of they were looking at her and they like kind of understood what was happening, but they you could see that they were like, ah, like this is my daughter though. Like I don't want to
which is
like this is
such
my
like which is
dude.
such a recurring motif in all zombie
Yeah.
media, where it's like you always have that one dude who's like got bit but doesn't want to tell anyone, or there's someone who is bit and is turning and like their loved one has to fucking kill them.
They had the baby in Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, dude, like, and so it's like that is like you can trace all that back to here too, where it's like no one wants to see a little kid die, but like they're going to turn into a zombie and compromise the rest of the group. Like this whole group was so woefully unprepared because this is literally the first time this is happening ever. So like nobody
Yeah.
knows what to do. But like obviously we, with the gift of hindsight,
Mm.
watch a movie like this and we know all the tropes. So it's very much
And
like a
e
yelling at the screen kind of movie for us.
and even as characters in the films, like as you progress through like film history, there's a little bit of meta-ness where the characters kind of understand
Horror
like
films and stuff. Yeah.
yeah, so like they kind of have to weave that in a little bit, but here they were just like, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. They're literally just flying by the seat of their pants.
Yeah.
Um, Direction, real quick, we can just talk about George Romero. Obviously, went on to have a very prolific career in the horror genre. I think he did like 6 of these movies total. I think
Mm.
it was Dawn was next, then Day of the Dead. The first 3 all bangers. After that, it gets kind of dicey. So he did like Land of the Dead, Survival of the Dead, and Diary of the Dead. I don't know; those are probably not in order, but those are the other ones that he made. Um, Famous for like injecting social commentary into his films. This one was about like social, and I guess there's the racial component, whether it was intended or not, are
Mhm.
all in there. And then like Dawn of the Dead plays on like the consumerism and obviously the very
Mm.
not subtle imagery of like we are the zombies in the mall, just kind of like consuming and buying shit. Like that's a pretty on the nose thing. And then Day of the Dead, it gets more into like political stuff and the government and corrupt government and everything. So yeah, Romero's great. Pretty early out of the gate here. I think everyone was like, all right, this shit's
He's
guy's
got
got
it.
a
Yeah.
good future ahead of him.
Yeah.
I really like the cinematography in this movie. I think it's pretty like it's very like guerrilla style filmmaking. I mean, this whole movie feels that way, but
Yep.
especially like I feel like there was like some handheld stuff, especially like in the cemetery and all through the house. Even it feels very like handheld,
A lot of it
um,
is. Yeah.
just and which serves to kind of make things feel a little more uneven keeled, like off balance and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's very uneasy the whole time.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
feel everything feels like pretty topsy turvy.
Yeah.
So just in the sake of getting through these, we don't have to linger too much. We can just talk about the legacy real quick to close this one out. Um, the funny thing about this movie is that upon release, due to like a titling error, this movie entered the public domain immediately. Where
Wow.
usually that takes like literally 100 years. So that's why you see Night of the Living Dead in so many horror movies, like on the TV. Like what characters in horror movies will be watching
Whoa.
Night of the Living Dead because it's public domain. So anyone can use it in anything. Like
So
you could
someone just fucked up the paperwork, is what you're
someone
saying?
fucked up. I don't know if they were able to make money off this movie. I'm not sure like all the history. Maybe someone watching can fill me in, but I believe that means that you can't make money on it. So obviously that was rectified in the later films, but like, yeah, this just entered public domain like upon release, which I'm sure Romero was fucking pissed.
If it's public domain, I'm not an expert, but like you can fully monetize it, but like anybody else can then leverage that IP. to also monetize. It doesn't keep you from doing so, but it's like the opposite of like a patent where you're like only I can do this, not anybody can do it, as far as I know.
Yeah, so
Something like that.
apparently the way like so this year Steamboat Willie entered the public domain, and
Yeah.
right away they made like two. They're making two horror like cheesy ass horror films based on Steamboat Willie.
Sure.
Uh, they did the same thing with Winnie the Pooh with the Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey movies.
Pinocchio, like Life of Pi, Life of P, the game that came out.
Okay, sure, yeah. So like,
Yeah.
so as soon as like I could make a movie about Steamboat Willie right now because it's in the
Yeah.
public domain.
Yeah.
So that's about my extent of it. I'm not a legal, expert, or I'm not a lawyer. Um, so yeah, that's Night of the Living Dead. I think we can safely say that that movie is a fucking masterpiece.
Yeah. Yep.
Um,
Yep.
incredibly important for its time. Its legacy is undeniable. Um,
Easily.
yeah. Any closing thoughts for you on Night of the Living Dead?
It was dope. I'm glad like we did this to get me to finally watch it. It's easy to write off old films to be like, like I'll just watch a newer kind of version of what that
Right.
started. But yeah, no, I'm very happy that I went back and actually gave it the time.
Yeah, especially in October, like it definitely hits differently. Real
Hmm.
quick, I'll just show my Criterion Collection 4K of this movie.
Damn.
You said earlier that this movie didn't look good when you watched it. Um, like it's just as far as the quality goes. Is that accurate?
Yeah, well, I had mistakenly watched
Oh
like the
yeah,
first
yeah,
10 minutes of the 90s one,
yeah,
and because Amazon had it like titled incorrectly, and I was like, why does this look so good? This doesn't seem right.
yeah. This
And
seems
then
way too modern.
yeah, so in contrast, I was like, oh, okay, this is right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, this 4K looks incredible. If we ever get the chance, I'd love to show you like just some of this so you can
Yeah.
see how good movies shot on film always look great in 4K, and then black and white looks really good on 4K. Um, so yeah, we'll just highlight the physical media component there because we do like physical media on this channel. Um, all right, so getting into the next one, we have Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Bro.
Very interested to hear your thoughts on Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So before we go category by category, if you just want to kind of give me your cliff notes here.
Okay, this movie cranks. It's dude, this movie's fucking gross. Um, Almost the entire time, everything about it is very off-putting. And I mean that in like I'm fully aware that that's exactly what they were going for, and they did it
Hmm.
very well. I lived in Texas for a couple years,
Oh, that's right.
and I've driven through like the parts of the state that like this is supposed to be set in, and the way that they captured just like the energy and the smell and the like fucking sun, and just
Everyone
like
is so
the
sweaty and
desolation
gross in this movie.
and everything is so much stuff is so weird. Um, and again, this was what I want to say
74.
74. Um, the idea that this got made then is crazy, but yeah, fantastic. And like let's not even mince words. Like this is a masterpiece, but let's run through the thing real
Yeah,
quick.
yeah. So just for everyone, like the sake of the audience, everyone's probably going to be like, yeah, obviously these are masterpieces. Like, what are we doing here? The fun part for us is the discussion where hearing Tyler's first thoughts on these. Like, I think it's pretty rare in the horror space and the film space that you find someone who is just watching some of these movies for the first time. The last two movies that we're going to talk about, those ones will be a little bit more up in the air. So that might be where some of the
Mm.
more interesting conversations come about. So, just bear with us as far as that's concerned. If you're like, hey, all these movies are masterpieces. What are these bozos talking about? Um, so, it's more just about the discussion and the fresh eyes on these movies, which is a rare thing. So, yeah, man, this movie is awesome. I just saw it in theaters with my girlfriend for the 50th anniversary, which is this year. Um, yeah, just such an important film. So yeah, let's just start breaking it down with the characters.
Hmm. The character's interesting. Um, I guess like you have the main squad. Um, some of them are fairly interchangeable and kind of vanilla. But then you have Franklin, the kid in the wheelchair.
Hmm.
Very interesting, just choice. Obviously, just like
I'm just going to interject.
yeah,
I watched a couple documentaries that are included on this 4K that I have. So I watched a couple of these documentaries because I am planning on doing a video essay on Texas Chainsaw before the end of the year to coincide with the 50th anniversary. And I was taking notes and stuff. And the depiction of someone in a wheelchair like that, like as a main cast character, was very unconventional for the time. So that
sure.
was not a popular thing, and pretty ahead of its time in that regard. So please continue.
Yeah, and even now, you don't watch like if a movie came out today and one of the main guys in a wheelchair, you'd be like, why do they like why?
Very good
You
point.
know?
Very good point. Yeah, it was it was a very intentional choice. Um, there are many points throughout the film where Franklin is like by himself, either
Yeah,
because he can't get upstairs or he can't go swimming like with the rest of the characters. And that was very intentional. They wanted you to feel,
like
isolated.
stuck.
Yeah, and like not like part of the group, but not, and Franklin is a very annoying character, but it's by
Yeah.
design. He's also very sympathetic, so you can definitely relate to him. He's uncomfortable. He's a heavier guy, so like he's very hot, and he's unable to do the other things that the other characters are doing. And that's before Leatherface shows up. So it's like this guy's
Yeah.
already having like the worst trip of his life. So
Yeah.
um
Yeah, I feel
go
like
go ahead.
yeah, he really helps to kind of just get across just like the awfulness of the situation right off the bat.
Hmm.
Um, the squad aside from that, whatever.
Well,
The main girl, who's
they're
the
all
main girl?
pretty Sally. They're
Sally.
they're all pretty just normal people. They don't have what I
Yeah.
would call like character traits. But again, that's
Yeah.
by design. These aren't supposed to be like very noteworthy. They're just supposed to be like normal kids.
Mhm.
So it's very, on brand for them to kind of just be like normal kids without anything super memorable about them.
Yeah. Kirk is very likable. Um, just like chill, handsome dude hanging
Yeah.
out. He gets killed first, so you're like, oh shit. Um,
Yeah, that's a good point too, where it's like he could be like in another film, maybe like
the
the
last guy that helps the last girl get away, kind of thing.
exactly. And he's very pretty masculine dude, maybe like I guess the strongest of
Yeah.
the group, and then to have him taken out immediately is like almost to say like, yeah, man, like
What great now what?
yeah, like you're
Yeah.
kind of you're fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and then Sally is very, she a lot of people give like Laurie Strode from Halloween the title of like first final girl or like best final girl, but like
Mm.
Sally predates that. Um,
So
she
Sally.
is she is by all accounts um like one of the, if not the first, like one of the first final girls.
Yeah, and uh I feel like she's great and like a lot of it like she really a lot of these horror films like this like the acting is a little dodgy, right? It's a little hit or miss. And she really seemed adequately terrified for what was happening.
She was frantic. She was out
Yeah,
of her mind.
yes. There's those close-up shots like you have on the front of the disc, like of her eyes and her
Oh,
face.
I mean, the cinematography. Like, this is an illustration,
Yeah,
I'm fairly certain. Yeah, this is an illustration, but this is pretty much what it looks like in the film. Like, they got
they
that
spend a lot
camera
of time.
right in
Hmm.
in her grill.
They spend a lot of time right on her face, and if she was just kind of just like, whoa, like it wouldn't have really had that effect. But there's a lot
No,
of it where you're like, oh my God, like this, like you're experiencing what's
Yeah,
going on through the reaction on her face, and she sells it really
she
well.
sells it
Yeah.
incredibly well. This was a low budget production, so they first of all, they a lot of them they wore like the outfits they wear are the outfits that they're wearing throughout the film. Like they don't have like other sets of the same costume.
I think only
So
Leatherface like ever like changes costume in
he
any
does
way.
change his
Yeah.
clothes, but
His like
so
wig.
so he actually might be the cleaner of all of everyone, ironically. But everyone is wearing
Gross.
what they're wearing throughout the film, and
Yeah.
so like they were all stinky. Uh, they were all super sweaty, and
The Texas sun.
yeah, it was very uncomfortable. Like famously, very uncomfortable production for everyone involved.
And then
Um, Go ahead.
and then we can't talk about characters without talking about the main character is the family.
Oh yeah, I gotta talk about
Um,
Leatherface.
who that whole family is an incredible cast of people. Um, Leatherface, obviously great. It's almost weird to call him a villain because there's parts of it where like you're like, oh, this guy's being controlled by his dad.
Dude,
This is just like a legacy thing.
he's a very he's a sympathetic character in many ways. I'm really glad you brought that up
Terrifying though. Yeah.
because if you think about it, this is a home invasion film from Leatherface's perspective. These teenagers just show up at his house, just let themselves in, and it's Texas, so if someone does that, like you're allowed to just kill them. Like if they
Right. Yeah.
and that's what he
Yeah.
does. And Leatherface is
It
he's mentally disabled. He's not, all there. You can tell there's something wrong with him right away. So when you watch it with that context, there's a scene in the film where
Where he sits by the window.
yeah, and he's kind of sitting
Yes.
there. He's like looking out the window, looking seemingly from. He's like, where do they keep coming from? Like where?
Yes.
And he's kind of like out holding his head in his hands, like, oh Jesus Christ, like what is happening? Like he's going through it just as much as these.
Yes.
Like that, he's more afraid of them than they are of him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like that's a really interesting component of the whole film. And like you said, his brother and his dad or whatever are
Yeah.
really they're really like the antagonists, and he's kind of just like there, and because that's his family, like he has to just do what they say, kind of.
And then very last thing to hit on, the grandpa is
Oh, so creepy, dude.
one of the craziest characters in any movie.
He's just sitting there like
you kind of meet him real quick at first when I
when
think
she runs upstairs.
yeah, she runs upstairs and you're like, oh, these are obviously corpses, gross, whatever, and she leaves. And
Yeah,
then they
you would
bring him
think
down.
Grandpa's alive. Like you don't realize that he's alive the whole
You're like,
time.
there's no way, dude. And then you realize he's alive for the first time when they cut her finger and they fucking put it in his mouth, and
Yeah, he's like sucking. Dude, that shit is crazy.
And she loses her mind as one would.
As one would, yeah.
And you're just like right there with her, and you're like, I can't believe this is happening. And she's like, I can't fucking believe this is happening. And I feel like that's the
Yeah.
point where I was like, oh, this is bad. Like this is really bad.
They keep trying to put the hammer in his hand so he can kill her because he's the best at killing.
Dude, he's so old.
So I will say, you haven't seen it, but Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, also directed by Tobe Hooper, is a very different film. It's a lot funnier.
Okay.
He leans more heavily into like the darkly comedic stuff. Excuse me.
The absurdity of the whole thing.
And some of that is in the first movie, but it's it's not as prolific.
Mm-hmm.
So I think of the scene where he's the dad, what's his name? Like what's his actual old man? His name's just Old Man in the movie. He starts whacking Sally with the broom. You remember that? Yeah. He just starts whacking her with the broom.
Gas station still. Yeah.
Yeah. He's just whacking her, and it's just kind of funny. And then there's the scene where they get back home, and he's like, "Look what your brother did to the door." And it's like that's what he's worried about is the door, and it's like these guys are so Like they're living in a totally different planet than our cast of characters.
Yeah, they're truly bizarre in a way that's terrifying because you're like, I don't know what these guys are gonna do because they're just playing by completely different rules than
Oh
anybody
yeah,
else.
no, they are doing their complete and utter own thing.
Yeah,
So yeah, characters are pretty solid. You know, for what they are being asked of, the characters are very noteworthy. Where they need to be.
for sure.
In Texas Chainsaw, obviously, Leatherface being like, you know, the highlight. Mood and atmosphere, we kind of touched on this already. Really captures that feeling of just being sticky, sweaty, hot, uncomfortable, you know, and then being terrorized by these like, you know, inbred sort of cannibals. Um,
Th- They also
so
take a Yeah, they also take a ton of time once you're in their house. There's tons of shots of just like especially that living room when the first girl stumbles in there and
mhm.
there's the chicken and they spend a lot of time just showing like all this furniture and all this weird shit that's all made out of like human bones.
Yeah, the production
And
design is crazy in this movie. Like
yeah, and
it it all feels so real and like handmade and
so
in
old.
in 74 the only way you're getting these kinds of props is by just making them yourself, which is what
Hmm.
they did. So everything just has that very natural feel to it, which
Yep.
is, you know, really high, ups everything to like the next level.
Yep.
I will mention the music real quick since we don't have a music category, and I say music in quotations because this movie,
Yeah.
similar to Night of Living Dead, is
Yep.
very like industrial sounding, and it's you know it's consistent with the film and like the feel of it, where it's just sort of like these sounds. It's just like mechanical grinding and scraping and
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
and which a lot of it is very natural because a lot of the main sounds are like the generator at the beginning, the
Hmm.
van trying to make its way through like that long Texas hot road, the
Hmm.
fucking chainsaw,
Yep.
them trying to then there's a part where they're kind of like they run through the not woods a lot, but they're running outside and there's all those thick branches that they're kind of like scraping through.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole film is very, very scrapey, very grindy. Yeah.
Yeah, I picked up on that so much more when I saw it in theaters a couple
Mm.
weeks back.
Oh, it's probably dope.
It was, you know, with the theatrical like sound system, it really stood out more than it ever has for me, and I appreciated it a lot more because of that.
Last thing on sound. Um, there are a few parts, especially when they're running, where there are not quite footsteps, but there are these very, very low sounds that would be kind of placed sonically the same way as like a kick drum would be.
Mm,
And they're not footsteps because I had to rewind it because I was bugged out. I thought that like I had people live above me and I thought that somebody was like stomping upstairs, and I was like, "What is that?" And rewound it, and it's just a movie. And especially when they're running outside, they're not timed as footsteps, but there's these deep like slamming sounds that happen, and it's so unsettling. And this is the part of the show where we always have to mention Hereditary at some point. There's a
mm,
part in Hereditary where they're running outside and there's this crazy very modern sounding 808 kick drum that just starts thumping out of nowhere. And so anyway, when I saw this on Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it made me think of that. And very, very unsettling. Yeah, you're like, this doesn't belong here, and it's bugging.
it's really good. It's the music is almost diegetic in a way because there is no conventional score as you would as we know it. Real quick, want to shout out Davey Deathray, my boy, my homie.
What's good, Davey?
Thank you for being here, bro. Right now we're kind of breaking down Texas Chainsaw Massacre a little bit and just going category by category. Sort of similar to me and Davey had a couple streams now where we've pitted two movies against each other, and we would have similar criteria, but we would assign a point value to it because we were comparing two different movies. We would either give the point to this movie or that movie. So that was kind of the impetus for these for this
Mm-hmm.
criteria that I came up with.
Yeah, it was a good call.
Um, So yeah, just wanted to shout out Davey real quick there. Thank you for being here. I'll probably say it a couple more times as well.
Yeah, yeah.
It's happened to be relevant so far, and you know, it is what it is.
I'm also a
Um,
big diegetic sound design fan. Yeah,
it's a fun word to say as well.
that too. Yeah,
Um, so we can move on from mood and atmosphere. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, very palpable
yep.
energy suffused in it. The story is pretty. There's not a ton to this story. It's pretty simplistic. Do you have any quick thoughts on the story?
Um,
Everyone knows the story. We all know, what happens here.
yeah, it's just I will say it's interesting giving when we think of it sitting in between Night of the Living Dead, it's kind of an inverse where somebody's trying to get out of a house as opposed to hold up inside of it.
Mm.
Also interesting, relevant to the next film that we're going to talk about, which is Halloween, which is closer to like Night of the Living Dead, where the villain is trying to get inside, and the final girl slash good guys are trying to like keep themselves safe inside. Um,
Good point.
very interesting. Given that there's not a ton of story outside of that. I even struggled to. I can't help when I watch a movie to think of like metaphorically, like what are they trying to say? Da da da. And I think in like in a good way, I think there was a lot of that in here. There's, I guess, some stuff about just like uh, being not just in Texas, but being kind of like separated from people. Um, like what
Yeah.
happens to when you don't care about other people and don't like value other lives. Like even the guy cutting himself in the car, talking
Very
about
nihilistic film.
yes,
I'll
yeah,
say there is some like thematic stuff that people have really commented on over the years. One of them being like the mass production of like the slaughterhouse and like how um when they sort of make that whole process like way more mechanical and like your people are like losing jobs to it, and now these people are essentially on their own. They're fending for themselves. They're living in the middle of nowhere. They're out of work. Like they even say in the beginning of the film,
yeah.
like oh, the sledge
There's
is
like a
good.
hammer. Yeah, the sledge
Yeah,
is better. Yeah, yeah,
they die better that way.
yeah.
Like so it's so what you've got is this family who now has to provide for themselves by eating people, um, because they're out of work. And it's a little bit more nuanced than that, but that's sort of my clumsy
Yeah,
explanation of the
yeah,
whole
yeah,
thing. But there's a lot of like that kind of thing going on. But yeah,
yeah.
overall on a surface level, the story is pretty simple, but it works. It works
It
well.
definitely works. It definitely works. Yeah.
We can talk about the scares real quick. Um, one of the This movie's got some good ones too. That beginning scene where Kirk is going into the house and Leatherface pops up with that big musical stinger and beats him with the fucking mallet. And then his death is very, excuse me, his death
He's
acting
like, ugh.
just tweaking out.
Dude,
Really convincing, very unsettling. I feel like,
he's on
obviously,
that board that's like rattling.
yeah, I haven't seen like every horror film prior to TCM, but like showing a death in that way feels very uh not only realistic but sort of innovative, where it's like, yeah, people would do that. Like
Yeah.
they would fucking start seizing and everything. So really cool in that regard as well. And then what are some other kills here that really stand out to you?
Dude, just that same one with Kirk, that shot is so good because the movie is so uh low contrast, very
Yeah.
just like tan white right there in the essentially effectively the desert right out in
Yeah.
Texas. And then you have that very striking shot of that red wall with all the skulls on it.
Yeah,
And then
it really is a very, like you said, very striking, kind of really draws your attention.
it's very striking. And then Leatherface pops out and he's like 6'10",
Just
to
a
be 180
a
pounds.
shocking image too of this man, hulking man, wearing a human face over his face.
Yeah, then the
Starts like
smash.
grunting. I'm pretty sure.
He's like, yeah, it sounds like a pig squealing. It sounds like a pig, and you're like, what is that? And Kirk is like, what is that? And then he
Yeah.
gets domed, and then he drags Kirk in, and then he slams a door
Oh
shut, and it's
yeah, he's
chrome,
when he slams that door shut. Yep,
and it's like
that
this
is like a
chrome,
famous scene.
and like that whole shot from like the red to the chrome, it feels like it fully takes you into like you feel like you're very much out of the. It feels like a different setting than what the
Yeah,
rest of the movie is at that
you're in the
point.
slaughterhouse now.
Yes, you're like, okay, I don't know what's going on now.
Yeah.
Um,
Real quick,
yeah.
Davey says the decision to not pile on the gore was great here because it does give a sense of realism and adds to the voyeuristic documentary feeling of the film. Really well said, Davey.
Hmm.
This film, despite being called the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, is really not that bloody.
It's not
Um,
literally visually graphic.
yeah, so
Like,
much of the
yeah,
violence is either shown off screen or like implied.
yep.
Namely, the next kill where God, what's her name?
I
Uh,
know the girl with the backless shirt,
yeah, Pam.
and he just like places it on the hook, but you never see.
You don't
There's
see
not
the hook.
even,
You don't see the hook go in, and that
and
is
it's
the
not
most
even
important
really,
thing.
yeah, and there's not even like very visceral sound design, which I was ready for.
Hmm.
Um, the shot of her coming out of the cooler, like half dead,
Yeah, that
is
I had that
bugging.
in the intro.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that
bugging.
shit is crazy because she's got like some brain damage or something going on because she's still fucking alive, which is crazy. And then we don't see her
Yeah.
again after that. I'm pretty sure.
I think I think like the most intense kill is when Franklin just gets chainsawed in the chair because he can't. You're like, this is it. He can't go anywhere.
Yeah,
And then I forget Susan. What's her
Sally.
Sally? Sorry, Sally. She's just standing there and she does the classic like holds her hair out and she's just like
She
ah.
literally cannot believe what she's seeing.
Yeah, which like fair. He didn't
Yeah,
even want to go. He didn't even want to
no.
go. And that's probably the roughest kill. And then the very end, that very end sequence is so good when they're trying to get away and they're so close, and that big semi
Hmm.
kills the younger brother. And then I don't know why he doesn't just drive away after that. He could have, but he doesn't. And then there's that whole end sequence of they're running around trying to get into the smaller truck. And yeah, it was very intense.
Yeah, that whole
Very fitting.
finale is super intense.
He's just like, what?
So yeah, and then he's doing the chainsaw dance, which has become very famous at this point. Um, and they've recreated poorly in like every sequel since then.
Bummer.
They also every sequel like recreates that shot of Pam going up to the house, and it's like that low shot where it's like her walking up to the house, and the
Mm.
house is like looming over her. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
There.
Daniel Pearl did the cinematography for this film, and it's really good. There's a lot of like the film. It's a good looking movie. You
Yes.
know,
I was surprised
it's
by that too. Yeah.
so that can take us right into direction here. Toby Hooper, he's definitely a legendary horror filmmaker at this point. He's done, he did Texas Chainsaw 2, he did Poltergeist, he did a movie called Life Force, did a movie called Eaten Alive about a killer crocodile. Um I
Oh
know I'm
shit.
I know I'm forgetting another big one.
He also. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead if you have anything to add.
This will be a little bit of a theme here for a couple of these, but he also is credited with at least partly composing the sound for this, which is
Oh
interesting.
yeah. Yeah, I think he had
Um,
a very hands-on. Oh, the Funhouse. I love the Funhouse. How could I forget the
mm,
Funhouse? Really good horror film. But please continue.
yeah, it just goes hand in hand, and I like seeing that. I like seeing that because to me, it's like, okay, this guy. I feel like when I'm like, okay, the director is also thinking about the sound of this, tells me that they really had not just like an atmosphere, but very much like a stronger sense of what they were trying to evoke. And like, I just love when directors also have a hand in the sound and like editing and stuff. So it's
Yeah,
cool. Yeah,
he wore a lot of hats with this movie, I think. He
as you do in a low budget film like this.
Yeah, it's almost like out of necessity because they just simply don't have, you know, any other alternative. But he co-wrote this with Kim Henkel, um, and I want to say he might have edited this thing too.
I hope so.
He
And
might
just
have
like see,
now edited by two other people, but yeah, he was very involved with many aspects of the production.
yeah, and just like seeing, like just like getting something like this to come to life, especially at the time that it did, is just like fascinating that like somebody was able to will people to like come and do this, make people
Hmm.
comfortable enough with like coming and doing it. Like it's so uncomfortable and be like, hey, like trust me, this will be good.
Right,
And then
like
like
it's
it's
so
fucking
easy to look
crazy.
at it now and be like, "Wow, what a great movie!" But like before the movie was ever a thing, and all it was this idea in this guy's mind.
Yeah.
Um, it's like that's like the whole concept of filmmaking is crazy because it's like you're literally willing
Yeah.
this thing into existence, and it's a group thing, so you have to like convince other people to like spend their time and their money and their willpower
A
all.
lot of people.
And but people want to do it because they want to make movies and like they believe in just the craft, and it's a really beautiful thing. And you
Really is.
know it's just very cool. So that takes us into our legacy. uh this movie's a masterpiece, obviously, but now maybe why, but you already knew that.
Yeah.
What do you have any closing thoughts on TCM?
Um, it seems, if I had to guess, it seems like it really opened the door. I feel like every so often in film and in music, you have something where people are like, "Whoa, like you could fucking do this now," and everyone's like, I guess you can just do that now." And
Yeah,
it really just like is a big step, not just like a step, but like a big jump from
yeah.
what seemed possible before that thing happened. And this feels like one of those moments.
Yeah, Night of the Living Dead, very much a moment like that as well. And then, 6 years later or whatever, you have TCM and they kind of do it again. Yeah, the Funhouse, I don't have the 4K, I have the Blu-ray from Shout. Really good movie. If you haven't seen it, you definitely should check it out. It's really fun, perfect for October. Um, so yeah, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, watershed moment in horror filmmaking. Excuse me, horror filmmaking. It's a masterpiece. So
Facts.
moving right along. So Texas Chainsaw Massacre is often credited as one of the first slashers, but this next movie is the movie that like if TCM unlocked the door, Halloween kicked the fucking door off its hinges because all you saw in the wake of Halloween was slasher after slasher after slasher. And we got a lot of really good slashers, but this is the king. I'm super excited to talk about this one with you. This is my favorite horror film of all time. Real quick, I have my Blockbuster VHS
Damn.
that my mom so graciously got for me. I got the Shout Factory 4K. Super dope. This is the best the movie looks on 4K. If you have this release, then you're good. If you're only going to get one release, get this one.
Can I see the spine of the fork of the VHS?
Oh yeah, sure.
Does it have Blockbuster on it?
I think it has it at the top. It says Blockbuster Presents right here.
That's dope, dude. Shout out your mom.
Yeah, this isn't a super expensive one. This is only like a $10 VHS.
It is so dope though.
Yeah, I'm super glad to have it. This is the 35th anniversary release of Halloween on Blu-ray. This was the first Blu-ray I bought of this movie.
Mm.
Um,
Of this movie.
and then this is a really cool release. This is the Lionsgate 4K Steelbook, and then on the back you have Lori there. Really
Damn.
cool. Um,
That knife shine.
yeah, that's a really cool Steelbook. I think that's out of print and a little hard to find now. But yeah, Halloween. What did you think of this movie?
Dude, so I thought that I had seen this in some capacity before, and then as I was watching it, I was like, I've never. I've never seen this. Um,
Crazy.
yeah, yeah. I'm gonna sound like a hater through some of this, but I'm really not. I don't mean any of this negatively.
No,
I
I want give me your unfiltered thoughts. Discount the fact that this is my favorite horror film, and let's just get into it.
I feel like Halloween was such. I feel like John Carpenter was such a student of everything that had happened up until that point in like horror film, and found a way to take it and distill it down to like its most simple form, and just like package it into like, okay, like this is all you want, right? And like made that, and like that was Halloween. Like people, I feel like people give we tend to give too much credit to things that we see as like first movers. We're like, oh, they did it first, and that's not always actually super valuable. It's the people that come later that understand what's going on and then take it and like perfectly package it up into something. And this feels like that, for better or for worse.
Interesting. Um, okay, so before we unpack all that, just want to look at the chat here. Black Christmas is one of the first slashers for sure.
Mm,
Came out the same year as TCM, both in '74. But
that's hard.
before that, you also have a film from 1960 called Peeping Tom, which gets a lot of credit for being one of the first slasher films. And then you also have a movie called Blood and Black Lace from 1964, directed by Mario Bava,
Yes.
which is a giallo film. But
Sick name.
giallo and slashers are not super far removed in terms of like what goes into making one of them. Town that Dreaded Sundown. When did that come out? I have seen that movie. 76. So 2 years after TCM. Yeah, not one of the first for sure. What's up, Doubles? Thank you for being here. Halloween is our favorite as well. You guys have good taste. Everyone's saying hi. Hi, hi, hi. Cool. Yeah, Halloween 78. Okay, so I will just say um I've gone on I've said it a litany of times that so I saw this movie for the first time when I was very young,
Mm,
and I don't even know that I saw it like in order
through.
or anything. I would see scenes from it and be terrified.
Hmm.
So like I don't remember a time in my life like before I knew what Halloween was. Like I kind of
Mm,
I've always this movie's been in my life as far back as I can remember.
okay.
So it scared me so much as a kid. Every nightmare I ever had was about Michael Myers, basically, from ages like, I don't know, 10 to, I might have been younger than 10. I'm honestly not even sure. I was very young. Let's just put it that way. So, yeah, this movie is like just has been pervasive for me. And as I got older and started like enjoying films and horror films, um, I always could go back to this one and it was always the most effective. It's
Mm.
so simple in its utilization of Michael Myers. I actually have a video coming out on this very subject um, sometime soon, so look forward to that. But yeah, do you have anything else you want to talk about in specifically before we get into the topics?
Nah, we'll just. I have a lot to say about this one more than the other ones, so we'll just kind of get into the. I'm sure it'll come
Yeah.
up as we go through the sections.
um, Eric's in the house. What's up, man? Thank you for being here. This one's probably gonna go
What's
a
good, Eric?
while, so you're good. We're just getting into Halloween, and we just talked about Night of the Living Dead and Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, it's gonna be a longer stream than usual. I feel like we kind of knew that. We're vibing.
Yeah, we got a lot to go through here, so we're not
I,
gonna rush anything, but we're also not gonna like take too long either.
if any month was the longer live stream month, October would be the one.
As long as you're good with it, I'm good with it.
I'm vibing.
Yeah. So Eric's, he loves films in general, so he's able to say That even though it's not necessarily for him, that he recognizes the quality and the greatness, which is all I ask of people. Like, obviously I am super biased, but like basically just like give it the respect it deserves. You don't even have to necessarily love it. Not you. I'm
Yeah,
speaking
yeah.
in general. But like I have people. I'm in a few like Discord servers where they talk films and stuff, and there are people who are watching this for the first time as well, and they're like, it doesn't age well. It's not very. It's kind of boring. This and that, and I'm like, okay, just take a moment.
Pull
Let's
back.
let's just slow our roll here.
Yeah.
Like, and some of them are younger. They're like in their early 20s and stuff. So I'm like, okay, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
You grew up with like The Conjuring and shit like that, so
Mm.
I understand. But just so all right, let's go into the characters here, and I'll let you take it away because I feel like I'm losing my voice a little bit from talking.
Um, I Michael's fascinating.
He's the character. I mean, well, him and
He
Loomis.
he's the character. Yeah, he's fascinating. Loomis is very interesting and is a great actor.
Oh yeah, Donald
Um,
Pleasance is fantastic.
yeah. Um, and past that, maybe hot take. I Lori is such a strange character to me. She Before we get to Lori, the other characters are fairly thin, right? They kind of just there. They
Yeah.
do, and this might be something interesting to hit on though. Like they do your typical horror movie things of like they drink or they smoke or they have sex and then they
hmm
get killed, which we know now. But when this came
Lori
out,
doesn't. Lori doesn't do those things.
yes, but when this came out, was that a trope yet? Where you're like, they're having sex, they're gonna die, or did this help to establish exactly that?
This movie is almost solely attributed to establishing those core traits. Between
Okay.
this movie and Texas Chainsaw establishes the trope of the final girl in
Mm,
conjunction with Black Christmas. They establish the trope of the final girl, and then Halloween sort of doubles down on it and says, yeah, the final girl is like virtuous, doesn't do drugs, doesn't have sex,
yep.
and
They set her
because
up like they heavily set all of that up. There's a lot of dialogue at the beginning that sets up Lori as like that kind of character. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, Linda and Annie are almost downright annoying. The
Yes.
Linda says totally a lot. Not very
Dude,
likable. Yeah.
dude, she's the girl from Carrie that
Yes,
wears the
she's in
hat the
Carrie.
whole fucking even to the prom. Yeah.
Yeah, that's PJ Souls. Yeah, she did some work with Brian De Palma as well.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, characters. There's really only three here that are worth discussing:
Yep. Yep.
Lori, Loomis, and Michael.
Yep.
So
Um,
Lori's sort of your quintessential final girls. Yeah.
yeah, and so I appreciate the fact that like they set Lori up as that character. That being said, Lori makes a handful of just very unrealistic and strange choices throughout the film, that were hard for me to like overlook as they were happening. Where she like kind like there's like three times where she like kind of hurt Michael and then just like chilled next to him and was just like, "All right, glad that's over." And you're like, "No, it's not." You're like, "Get out of there." And she has the time, she has the ability to do something else, and she chooses not to. And she does it like a few times. And there's a time where she like stabs him and then goes upstairs and tries to like send the kids out. And she's like, "All right, well, it's safe. I'll send these 8-year-olds out past Michael because he's definitely dead." And then he comes up the stairs and she's like, guess not. And there's just like a few times like that where I was like, come on.
Yeah. These are not uncommon criticisms.
Okay.
Um, I totally hear you. There's not much anyone can really do in the way of excusing them.
Yeah.
other than to say that they need the movie to happen.
Right. For sure. Or
And
else it's
that's
just a
just,
one scene thing. Yeah.
well, all of the things you're talking about, I feel like they all happen in kind of quick succession in the third act, right?
Yep.
Right. So um yeah, it's very easy for audience members in any horror movie to, because that's a trope as well that Halloween creates,
Like, come on. Like, yeah. Yeah.
where the
Yeah.
killer always pops back up for one more scare.
Mhm.
And Michael does that like several times in the third act.
Mhm.
So it creates that trope, and it almost creates a scenario where you're like yelling at the screen saying like, you know, what are you doing? You know, he's not dead. And it's very easy for us to say like, yeah, I would have, killed, kept stabbing until he was dead. And then,
Yeah.
so it's hard to say what anyone would actually do in a situation like that, as far as like being able to suspend your disbelief and stuff. I could totally see that being annoying though, like and kind of almost taking you out of the film a little bit. So what do you think about like Loomis though? Talk to me about Loomis.
He's similar to like Night of the Living Dead. I was surprised at how complex of a character he was. Where you have Michael, who is this like psychopath, big, scary, just like murderer, and he like Loomis knows that's who he is, and he's like, no, he's like, I know this guy. I've been his doctor since he came in. When I met him, he was
Yeah,
like that. He'll
he
never
spends
be
a lot of
anything
time
except that.
spends a lot of time trying to warn people.
Yeah. And for him to then still at the end of the day be confident enough that like no, like I think I can figure this out. I can come and talk to him, or confront him somehow and like solve this. Um, was just like added that element of like you could have had the movie without him in it,
Hmm.
and like it could have played out more or less the same in terms of like what actually happens. But that element of it and him being in it in that way makes you have to constantly think about like, all right, wait, like I feel like it makes Michael seem like a more complex character, and like calls out the fact that you don't know what he's thinking and what he's gonna do, because there's a smart guy who does know him, who's like, yeah, like I don't know, like he'll probably show up here at some point, but like I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, he Loomis feels a responsibility for Michael, and he like
Mhm.
more so than like the police or anyone. So he
Mhm.
is very much like, I need to be the one who brings him in because no one else knows quite what they're dealing with like he does. Real quick, I just want to acknowledge some of these comments in the chat. Asking if we consider Leatherface a slasher. Um, because we talked about earlier, like he's not really like, at least in the context of the first film. Some of the other sequels, it's totally different. Context of the first film, he's not like malicious. Like he really just doesn't know any better. So, whereas like
So
Freddy, Michael, and
crazy.
Jason are like, very intentionally going out and like killing people, whereas in
Yeah.
TCM they're coming to him. So it's hard to say like whether he really is or isn't. He's definitely as famous and popular as some of the other ones. So yeah, I don't know. That's a little trickier than you might think.
Yeah.
um, and then let's see. The doubles say I enjoyed Laurie's character. It worked for me. Yeah, I mean Jamie Lee appears in some other. She's in Halloween 2, H2O, and then
All the recent ones.
all the
Yeah.
recent ones. So her character gets fleshed out a bit more, but in the first movie, it is pretty. There's not a lot to her character, I would say.
And like,
But her character overall, there's a lot more layers to it when you start including some of the other movies.
yeah, and like I definitely, especially in in the context of the film, definitely enjoyed her, and she's good. Like again, a lot
You
of these
do
like
root for her, yeah.
root for her. I liked her with like the kids, and her like understanding her role as like the innocent
Yeah,
girl, and just like acting wise, like super solid, which is not
very
always a
solid.
given in a role like that.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's I think for me that's more down to like the script, just some of the decisions that they have her make. I was like, I don't know, but her as like
Yeah,
a yeah.
I can understand what you mean. Eli says John Carpenter's score is on point. Some would say it's the best horror score. We can talk about that a little later as far when we get into the legacy.
Yeah, score's great.
Um, Eric says, I think any good slasher has those moments of Monday morning quarterbacking. Yeah, that's what makes slashers fun in a lot of ways, is like getting the audience to be like interactive and like but getting in on board with what's going on and like,
I would have
feel
done this. Yeah.
yeah, and be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you dumb." Like, "Oh, you're so dumb." And it's like, "Oh," and then you're rooting for the slashers, so it's like it's very much like you want to be a participant, whether it's
Yeah.
for the villain or the protagonist. Doubles are saying that they love Loomis's passion and resilience in his quest to capture Michael. He had one goal, and you understand his motivation for why he was doing what he was doing. Yeah, so you mentioned that you could take him out of the movie and it would kind of more or less play out the same. I think his role is super pivotal because you, from the beginning, he's coming, he's looking for Michael and he knows he's going to kill again. So there is like that ticking clock component. And
Mm-hmm.
as the audience, we know he's coming. Laurie doesn't know. She has no idea he even exists. She has no idea who he is.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the tension comes from we know he's coming, but we don't know when he's coming. And is he going to make it in time to help Laurie? So I do think he is pretty pivotal in that sense. And then he just also serves as like the perfect foil for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and then we can talk about Michael a little bit. Super fascinating character. Just a blank slate. We don't know why he does what he does. He's ambiguous. Give me your take on that whole thing.
Dude, I maybe this isn't the best section to bring this up, but I love that unlike some of the other movies that we have talked about and that we will talk about, Halloween sets up the plot and the main antagonist in like the first 5 minutes. And you know exactly what's happening, who it is, where it's coming from,
Well, let me ask you
and
this. Sorry to cut you off, but
no, no.
when you're seeing that whole POV intro, did you know that it was a little kid when you were watching it?
I knew that just because I knew that,
Right.
unfortunately.
Through osmosis, you just kind of have that scene kind of yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Fair
Yep.
enough. I was wondering if you had if that was something that was like cuz that's people who watched it back in the day and hadn't seen it were like, "Oh shit, like it was a kid the whole time."
Yeah.
You assume that it's oh, you know what? You read my script for the video I'm making, so yeah, there's no way
Oh, that too.
I
Yeah.
have it in there too. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
No, but
yeah.
I did know that. Yeah, I did know that already though. Yeah,
So, yeah, Michael is just this blank slate. In later sequels, the reason that he goes after Laurie is because it's revealed that she is his sister. But in the context of the first film, that was never the intention. That was something that they retconned in Halloween 2, which
yeah.
you should also watch because it's a good movie.
Hmm.
But I don't like that as a plot point. I think it's not what I find interesting about Michael. I think it's more interesting if we don't know why he does what he does, and that
He's
maybe
just out there.
Laurie just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and like maybe she reminds him of his sister that he killed when he was a kid. That was his first kill.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ever explicitly state it, but make it an ongoing conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I think is interesting about his character. I'm like a Halloween purist. I really love the first one, and then I can take or leave most of the sequels.
Okay.
So talk to me about a little bit about your opinion on that.
Just like on Michael in general.
Yeah, just like how he's like I said, he's a blank slate. He's basically the absence of motivation
Yeah, he's
because
yeah.
well with Jason and Freddy, like Jason kills people because teenagers keep showing up on his property and having sex. So that's why he kills people. And that sort of defines his character and
Yeah.
informs his character. Freddy kills people because, he's killing the sons and daughters of the people who burned him alive.
Mm-hmm.
That informs his character. Michael's what informs Michael's character is that we don't know what informs his character.
and
And
like
that's what I find so interesting.
that absence of motivation where you're just like you don't know exactly what he's gonna do or why. And then you also, I feel like towards the end of Halloween, you realize like, okay, like is he uh, not that he's impervious or invincible, but you're like, is this a guy? Like he gets stabbed, especially in the scene with like the closet, he gets stabbed in like the eye, and he kind of just like lays down real quick and hits like a power nap, and then he's like, all right, like let's try this again.
It asks the question: is he supernatural? He's like a
Yeah,
force of nature because right at the end when he gets shot by Loomis and he takes all those slugs and falls out the fucking window,
he takes like 5 shots. Yeah.
he actually shot him 6 times. Um,
Dude.
but then and then he's gone.
Yeah.
And then
Loomis is like,
I love the way the film ends, where it's all these like establishing shots of all the locations that we've been throughout the film, and it's just it's cut
mm,
over with his heavy breathing, and it kind of leaves
mm-hmm.
you with this feeling like he could be anywhere.
Yep.
You know, we don't know where he is, and it's like, well, if he could survive getting shot 6 times, like, is there even any like stopping him? Like,
Right.
and it leaves you on that, and that's what is so fucking brilliant about it, man.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
continue. We're talking about
That,
characters here, but
yeah, and I feel like, and I could be wrong, but I feel like even throughout the few times that he kind of gets attacked by Lori, he has a quick scuffle with a dog.
hmm
He never like they never show him bleeding or any kind of like they don't really show him taking damage, which probably changes in the later movies. And it's probably just like a logistical thing. It's easier not to show him like blood on the mask or whatever. But
hmm
he just seems like he kind of just like takes it and just kind of keeps going, and like there's no real effect. And yeah, it's scary.
yeah,
Yeah.
very effective. So yeah, we can move on from characters because we just spent a while on that. Um, mood and atmosphere. I'll let you take this one.
um, yeah, I mean, like I feel like a lot of this comes down to like cinematography, sound, overall kind of like vibe like that. The first shot is great. That real long shot of him, the POV, and then the mask obscuring it. That kind of sets like it's just uneasy because it's very strange.
hmm
And then you go from that into this scene of Loomis and the nurse kind of driving to like it's like a mental hospital or wherever
Oh,
Michael
that
is
whole
at.
scene is super creepy, where all the inmates are outside, and
She's
you're
like, "Do
like,
they let them outside like this?" And
yeah, there's that imagery of their ghostly white,
just
like
kind
gowns
of
in the middle of the night, like um, through like the windshield
the
is
car. I
such an
think it's raining.
yeah, it's raining. It's such an eerie image, dude.
Yeah, and like that. Yeah, and so like those two scenes are like how the movie starts.
hmm
And so like nothing good is happening at all.
No, no, not at
But then
all.
it cuts to that to Lori and her friends walking home, and it's kind of cozy. It's like a very looks like a very like
Yeah.
comfy small town. Everybody knows each other kind of vibe, which then
hmm
feels like already then you're like, whoa, this is really weird that we're here now. Um,
Yeah. Well, it gives you that it it gives you the sense that like, oh, they're in for a rude awakening because Michael's coming.
yeah,
You know these plots are about to like intersect.
yeah.
Yeah, I the mood and the atmosphere is incredible. The direction shot by Dean Cundy, really good cinematography. There's so many iconic shots in this film that I fucking love. There's the shot from across the street where Michael's just standing in front of the house and you see his silhouette. Really good stuff. And then later, similarly, we have the shots where he's pursuing Laurie and he's walking across the street very slowly.
Mhm. Mhm.
Really great stuff. In the finale, you've got the shot where he like his mask just slowly emerges from behind her.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
where basically
Yep.
they're just turning up that light basically, and then he slowly comes into frame.
She's in the bedroom. Yeah.
So many
Yeah.
iconic shots. Like there's the shot where he's in the background and she's in the foreground, and he does that.
He just
He
he
does
just
that.
sits up.
He does that sit up. Like just really incredible cinematography for such a simple film.
Mm-hmm.
The mood that they're able to create through the score, the John Carpenter score, is obviously iconic. You hear that
Force
score,
loves.
you know what it is. Even people who haven't seen the movie, they know what it is. Yeah, mood and atmosphere is all incredible. Moving on to the story here. Um, it's a simple story. It's babysitter murders. Um, and the simplicity is what works about it. I mean, is there anything you want to add? We kind of talked about this already, but is there anything you want to talk about as far as the story?
I do I do like how simple they kept it, even to the point of like being like, okay, we have these two kind of main people that Michael is going after, and we're literally just gonna like put them across the street from each other for simplicity's sake.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I like that they could have like drawn it out and been like, oh, he's terrorizing this whole town, and they were like, no, he's just across the street. Um, and
Yeah,
there's so many unanswered questions, like we've been talking about, like who is he? Why is he doing this? And I think the decision to just like not go into those at all and just be like, yeah,
yeah,
he's just doing this,
yeah. They never tell you what made him
helps.
snap as a kid. Like it's because it's just not. It's not important. You know.
He doesn't even look menacing when they take the mask off,
Yeah,
which almost makes it worse because he's kind of just like, whoa. He's not like, "Ah." If he was like snarling, you'd be like, okay, like,
yeah. No, he just kind of looks very unassuming. You know, and it's not
yeah,
what you would expect, but it also
yeah,
is in a way.
yeah.
Real quick, I just want to address some comments. Eric wants to know what are the Halloween movies to watch and the ones to pass on. I can only give my own opinion. If anyone in the chat wants to chime in as well, feel free. Halloween 1, 2, and 3, I like. Actually, I like 1 through 4. 3 is totally different. Michael's not in it. It was intended to be like an anthology thing.
Mm.
But it's very fun movie and worth watching. 4 is good. I don't like 5. I don't really like 6. Resurrection is bad. I don't love H2. I don't love H2O. Um, the Rob Zombie ones people want to know about. Rob Zombie's Halloween 1 is everything that I like about the first movie, the opposite of that. They explain why Michael is the way he is. They make him a hulking, 7 foot tall menace. Totally missed the point of like the first movie. It's the complete antithesis of what makes the first one good, in my opinion. And then Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, I actually quite like. I actually kind of like that movie a good amount. And then the David Gordon Green trilogy is all pretty good. I like 2018. Halloween Kills is kind of meh, and then Halloween Ends takes some pretty interesting swings, and it's pretty creative. As far as like one of because like, the thing about these movies is they all start to feel the same. So as I've gotten older, I tend to like the ones that are doing something different because you're never going to beat the first one for me. So you might as well try to strike out on your own and like do something new. So those are the ones that I've come to appreciate over the years. Yeah, Rob Zombie's Halloween is tough, 100%. It's I find myself drawn to it, but like I just never really quite come away from it liking it. But the second one is actually solid.
You can also
Go
go ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say you can also go and check out the your stream with Davey Death Ray where you guys talked about the Rob Zombie one a lot.
Yeah, we talk about Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 and juxtapose it with Halloween 2 81, which is the sequel to the original. So that's a good one. For those two specific movies, we do a pretty deep dive. Their timeline is 78 and Halloween 2018. So yeah, Halloween 2018 is a direct sequel to 78 and it cuts out all the other sequels.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
and I do quite like 2018 as well. People showing love for Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. Yeah, it's a fun one. It's totally different. Has nothing to do with Michael Myers or anything, but it's a good time. Moving into the scares here. Simple scares. Like we've kind of mentioned already. The scene where he does the sit up, the scene where he comes out of the shadow. There's a bit of a jump scare, like a proto jump scare when he jumps out and stabs Bob and pins him against the wall. That
Dude,
one's pretty effective. Like for me, I know that's coming, so it almost doesn't work for me anymore. But
Hmm.
for someone who's seeing it for the first time, like, what did you think of that, Kill?
Yeah, that was f- fine. I feel like I knew, like, they kind of really set up Bob, like, he just seemed like somebody who was gonna get killed early.
For
He had
sure,
that kind of vibe.
he's having sex, so he's definitely dying.
Yeah, and he's just kind of obnoxious, which like is kind of a giveaway in like
Hmm.
a movie like that. Um, the scene where then Michael puts on the sheet and goes up to kill like his girl is funny and kind
Yeah,
of unexpected.
it's very
And
almost out of character because it's like every
yeah,
so often Michael will do like something kind of goofy, and it's
and
like
kind of clever.
yeah, and it tells you like okay, clearly like there's something going on up here. Like he knows that if he
Yeah,
puts the sheet on, then he can get closer to Linda.
yeah,
So it's very like animalistic in that sense where he's like using camouflage. Like it's very like primal shit
yeah.
where it's very interesting.
And then I do. This isn't a kill, but it is a scare. The scene where then Lori goes to the house, and Linda and Bob are dead, and she's in the
Hmm.
bedroom, and she like sees them. Yo, the shot of the headstone
Yeah,
in
with
there,
Annie's body.
it's crazy. And then but then there's a shot where Bob is like swinging upside down,
Yeah,
which like on
it's
one hand
it's
doesn't
kind of
really make
funny.
it doesn't
Yeah,
make any sense, but I loved that. It was just like equal parts kind of funny, but really bugging, and I loved that shot. Yeah, it was a good
yeah,
one.
it's interesting because Michael also is shown to like lay out his kills in like these like tableaus of like these like grisly images.
He's
Like
doing a thing.
he lays Annie out with his sister's tombstone that he stole earlier in the film. He
Hmm.
fucking dangles Bob by his legs. Like
He's just like,
he just like does shit with their bodies after he kills them. You know,
yeah,
which is like could be evidence of like his brain working on like a very like playing with your food sort of thing. Like it's all you can
yeah. You're
infer
just again, you're like, why?
a lot from it, but it never outright says anything with any level of certainty.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty good scares. Real quick, we can just talk about John Carpenter's direction. um, I mean, John Carpenter is on the Mount Rushmore of like greatest horror filmmakers of all time. Um, obviously he fucking kills this movie.
Hmm.
Any thoughts on the direction here before we move on?
Despite what I still think are a few weird shortcomings with like the character of
Hmm.
Lori, this very much feels like somebody who knew exactly what they wanted to make, what they wanted to do, how they wanted it to feel, and just went and like did it. It doesn't feel like there's like loose ends here.
Yeah,
And
it wraps up really
yeah,
well.
yeah, and again, him just being like the director and doing the composing, like tells me that much more that he really knew exactly what he wanted to evoke and like nailed that. Yeah,
It's a common theme with these first three films, isn't it?
yeah, yep.
Yeah, John Carpenter is the shit. He nailed this movie super hard. And then we kind of alluded to a lot of the direction, like through the mood and the atmosphere, like the things with and cinematography as well, but like all those scares that we talked about, those can all kind of be lumped into this as well. So the legacy of Halloween is undeniable. There's like 13 to 14 movies.
Jesus.
Um, and the score is, anyone can recognize that score. Yeah, this is one of the most popular horror films of all time, and it spawned a wave of of imitators and copycats.
Effectively created the genre.
It took what had already been established by movies like TCM and Black Christmas, and then added some more critical components, and then that all came together to become the blueprint that later, like films like Friday the 13th, would all build upon. So it's very much a foundational movie in that way. So yeah, Halloween is a masterpiece for sure. Yeah, masterful direction. He had an eye for what he wanted to accomplish. Yeah,
Hmm.
this is only like his third movie too, so like he really showed
Crazy,
a lot of promise out of the gate.
crazy.
All right. So now we're going into our last two movies, and these are the ones where it's not as obvious if this is a masterpiece or not. And it's a lot more open to discussion, I would say. Like the first
Hmm.
three very much, you know, they're fucking masterpieces. So we're gonna talk about Christine here. This is another John Carpenter film.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
If I'd known that we were gonna do this stream about these five movies that I had recommended to you prior to that, I might have given you a different one here. But I think it actually works as well because it's sort of
Yeah.
it's a bit of an outlier.
Yep.
Um, I just for the sake of not having two John Carpenter movies, but hey, whatever. I love John Carpenter. I really love Christine. So you've read the book, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm gonna let you start off and give me your opening thoughts on Christine.
Christine is very fun. Um, Christine's very fun. Um, there are a handful, there are a bunch of moments where it really is surprisingly strong and really shines. And I think overall, though, it falls victim to um, uh, a lot of the same pitfalls that a lot of Stephen King adaptations fall pitfall to, which I'm sure we'll get into in other stuff. But
Interesting.
I enjoyed watching it, and I feel like overall as a whole thing, it didn't really like hit for me. All of this being said, I am tainted by having read the book, which like the movie is never exactly what the book is going to be, especially for something like a Stephen King book. So it's a very big, it's a weirdly large book for what the plot is. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean King doesn't really write small books, so
nah.
all right. So let's start out with the characters for this one. Obviously,
Um,
there's I would say there's four big ones.
yeah. Um, Arnie,
Mm-hmm.
his what's his boy's name?
I was just about to look that up because I'm forgetting.
I literally want to say Chris, but I know that's not true. But he looks like a Chris in the movie.
It is Dennis
Dennis, Arnie, Dennis, Christine,
and Lee.
and Lee. Um, uh, so characters. Okay, so two big things here. One, a lot of the acting is bad. Um,
Valid.
a lot of the acting is just not very good. Um, and biggest thing, and this is a really big Stephen King adaptation thing, and a lot of it has to do with the characters, is one of the most interesting and strongest things of Stephen King's writing is that the stories revolve around him setting up characters that are very real, very full, and very believable, and setting up a world that's very real and believable, and then he kind of throws in this really crazy circumstance, and then so much of the story is watching the characters be like, "Whoa, this is crazy. What do we do?"
Like
And
reacting to the now super crazy thing that's happening.
in like very believable ways that you as the reader are like, yeah, this is crazy, right? And the characters are like, yeah, I don't know what to do because this is crazy. And then a lot of the movies kind of sprint through that and instead choose to focus on like, look how crazy this thing is. And you're like, yeah, that's kind of crazy, but then when the characters aren't fully bought into it and like realized, you don't have anything to grab onto. And then because a lot of times the crazy thing is like it's not that it's not crazy, but he doesn't spend tons of time explaining the thing. And Christine is very much that, where he's just like, there's this car and like it's evil, and anybody who like really fucks with this car is also gonna be evil. And the story becomes like the people around. So you have Arnie, right? And
Hmm.
Arnie is set up as this like very normal, bullied, sensible, sensitive kid, and then you watch him just like divulge and get evil, and you feel really bad for him the whole time, and you're like watching him spiral, and it's really rough. And in the movie, they kind of just speed run that, and just like all of a sudden, he's just super badass and has this hot girlfriend, and then he dies, and you're like, all right, and yes, I don't know. Does that make sense? Like, do you also see that? Like, I feel like a lot of King stuff suffers from that.
No, I totally understand, and I think the number one problem is just the length of the books, and it's like, how do you condense that
It's very
into
hard. Yeah.
like a movie, like an under 2 hour thing? So like, you might argue that one of the reasons that Carrie works so well is because of how short of a book that is. It's
Mm-hmm.
probably one of his shorter books.
For sure.
So you don't have to really cut anything. Something like Christine, things are going to wind up getting cut out, you know? Like in the movie, Christine is just shown to be evil from the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
where in the book it's because that guy LeBay or whatever dies in the car, and now his ghost is haunting the car effectively. You don't really get any of that in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, what you have is like, it's implied that there was another guy who had a similar relationship to Christine, but that guy was not the reason that Christine was the way she was. It was just a
It
similar.
was
It was a thing that is going. It's what's going to happen to Arnie, basically, if he keeps it up.
right.
I think that change is fine for the movie, because in the interest of like brevity, like you kind of get what you need effectively without all that backstory. So like, in my opinion, that's probably one of the first things that they were like, yeah, this can probably come out of the movie, and what we'll be left with is effectively the same thing. So like, I don't mind that change so much. Yeah, and then yeah, so the your comments on like the characters and the acting and stuff, it's all valid. Like, they do kind of jump around like weeks in advance. I guess that's also in the name, in this, for the sake of like just brevity and like kind of getting everything across, because they only have so much time. Oh, excuse me. So I guess it's just going to be a case of like, how much does this thing bother you, and how familiar are you with the source material?
Mm-hmm. I
Because certain things might bother one person, and then the other person won't be affected by it at all.
I
Not
think
to
it.
say you're not valid. I'm sorry to keep cutting you off.
No, no.
They're very valid criticisms. It's just, for some people they won't bother them so much.
Yeah, I think for me, part of it is too is like the acting is very not uniform because you have the guy that they actually buy the car from is really good and is super believable and a great actor. And
Hmm.
then the guy who runs the garage,
Oh yeah, Darnell.
Darnell's really good. And it kind of creates this contrast. Yeah, Darnell's fucking great.
He's pretty great too. I do enjoy Darnell.
And so when they're on screen and it's like him talking to Arnie and that contrast, it makes it where you're like, like Arnie's just not he's just not hitting like just like literally like just as an actor, like he's just not hitting. We're like as if everybody was at least kind of on the same keel, then it could kind of retain that campiness. But there's a handful of parts in the movie where the acting is really good, or we'll get into, but like the effects are super good, where you're like, oh wait, it almost feels, and we'll move past characters, but it almost feels like there's a handful of moments where you're like, oh, this could have been really good, but a handful of parts and some of the acting is just really holding this back from being as great as it could have been, and it makes it kind of glaring for me.
Yeah, for sure. I totally understand that. I think Arnie is like playing both ends of the spectrum, where he's super like nerdy kid in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So the actor Keith Gordon is actually getting to do a lot, like because he starts out
Mm-hmm.
super nerdy, and then he is playing like so like almost comically evil, and like
Yeah.
there's a bit missing in in the middle there to kind of make these things feel like a cohesive character arc.
Sure.
So I totally get what you're saying there. Yeah, it does kind of border on like just comedic, like his how quick his turn is. And then the actors who played Dennis and Lee, they're I don't want to say they're a flat line, but they don't really. I think they're serviceable. They don't do, you know, they're not really the standouts.
Yeah, and and last thing on this, and again, this might not be the best place for it, but there's actually more of there's a very interesting story with Dennis and Lee, more fleshed out in the book that I feel like is actually a much more central part to the overall story and like impact of the story than like even like the car itself is. That is just completely removed from the movie. And to me, I was like, they didn't hit on that at all. And to me, I was like, that's like the main thing. For context, I thought Christine, I read the whole thing. It's like it's a very long book. And for
Hmm.
me, it's fun. And I was like, this is fine. And then literally in the last like 4 or 5 pages, something happens and it's just between Dennis and Lee, and it completely not recontextualizes the whole story, but adds this other layer to it that I was like, oh, like this is what the story is about and what like King is trying to like convey and communicate. That like really blew my mind and is the thing that has stuck with me much more than anything that actually happens in the normal plot. That just doesn't come up in the movie at all. So yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
gonna have to remind me what that is, like off camera.
Okay.
All right, let's move into mood and atmosphere, and we can kind of start, knocking these out. I really like the score here. I want to say Carpenter did this score as well.
Hmm. Let's see.
Alan Howarth is a frequent collaborator of Carpenter, and he was in on it as well.
Okay.
Yeah, really great eerie score. All your best mood and atmosphere scenes come from when Christine is out killing people in the middle of the night.
So those are all so good.
So many great scenes, and then we can talk about the incredible effect where Christine has been destroyed by Buddy Repperton and his gang, and Arnie's like, "Okay, show me." And there's like that
Yeah.
fucking that sting, and then so do you know how they achieved that effect?
No, if I had to guess, there was something on the inside that was like pulling the car apart, and then they showed it in reverse. Is what I.
Correct. Yeah. So
Okay.
I believe it's called like a hydraulic press or something, and
Okay.
they were basically like pulling the car in from the inside, and
Yeah.
then they play that footage in reverse.
I think I wait, wait, wait. I think I have a note from it right when he says that. Let me see. Um, is it a different doc? I remember like that. I remember being like, eh, and then literally that scene where he steps back in the garage and he's like, okay, show me. And I feel like there's like a musical part that comes in right there too.
Yep.
And
There's a musical like stinger.
I was like, okay. I was like, it almost is not campy, but like almost self-aware a little bit. And you're like, all right. And yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I really love that whole sequence, and the effects are so good. No
Yeah.
CGI bullshit, like
No. Yeah. Yeah.
because that's how they would do that now.
Yeah.
Like it's just all so good and so practical, and a really great effect. Yeah, the mood
You
and
al-
atmosphere is great here.
you also have the atmosphere of just like I feel like King always, despite my previous comments of kind of shitting on him, like puts together a good cast of characters of like the
Yeah,
bad guys and
the
and the
people
typical
who,
bully.
yeah, all the people who occupy this town, the parents, you know, the Darnell,
You
everybody.
know,
To the
the cop who comes and like questions Arnie, who's
Harry
great.
Harry Dean Stanton, really great character actor. He's really good in here.
Yeah,
Story we kind of effectively talked about.
yeah,
Both as it compares to the book and everything. Yeah, King is great at like, what if you took this thing and made it haunted?
yeah.
And that's kind of what you have here, and this is like the best version of that, where it's like a haunted car is just so cool. It's
So
so
simple.
it's so like classic Americana, like
The car is
just
so badass.
super sick car.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's just haunted and it's killing people and it's fucking cool.
And I like there's probably reading into it too much, but there's a little bit of a deeper thing here where Arnie is with Lee and she's like, "Hey, like you have this car, you have this other thing in your life that isn't a person, but that you seem to love more than me, and I have a problem with that." And Arnie has a problem with being like he can't tell her no because he knows that it's true,
Hmm.
and that's kind of like I don't want to say universal, but like is a very
It's a
is a
common thing.
it's a thing, and like a thing with like guys who like they have this thing that they obsess over
Yeah,
and
whether
gets in
it's
the
like a
way of like
hobby or
relationships.
their work or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's cool. That is an interesting component of the whole thing, because like Arnie does care about Lee. You know,
yeah,
obviously he does. Otherwise, he would tell her to kick rocks and he would just drive around in Christine all the time.
yeah,
But so he is kind of being pulled because like he finally has what he's always wanted, which is like, to be cool and well liked and have a girlfriend and stuff. But it comes at the cost of like his humanity.
yeah.
So it's like just as he starts to kind of get all the things he wants, he loses everything. Which is a really cool story. Yeah, I mean the story of Christine's great. It's so simple. You've got the only Stephen King and John Carpenter collaboration, which is like pretty fucking cool. It's like
Very,
it's the cross section of like two of my favorite horror, creators.
yeah, yeah. I wish they did. I wish they did more. Yeah, they still could. You know,
John
um,
Carpenter's been retired from. He hasn't made a movie since 2012, so
damn.
yeah, kind of sucks, but whatever. He's chilling. The scares are pretty minimal, I would say. This isn't like what I would consider to be like a scary movie.
hmm
You've kind of got the scenes where Christine is chasing the bullies, and that's where the bulk of your scares come from, I would
Dude,
say.
my favorite scare in a kind of scene like that is when there's one of the bullies who is getting chased and he kind of backs into like this car little like port, and Christine is at there and you can tell that Christine isn't gonna fit, and he thinks that he's safe, but you already know what's coming,
Yeah,
and
she
then she
just
just
keeps
starts like
going.
revving. Oh my god, that's that scene is so, and it kind of is drawn out and kind of similar to like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. They don't actually really. It's not very visceral,
No,
very
it's not a
graphic when
very
it actually happens.
it's not a gory movie or anything like that. It's pretty
Uh,
tame.
but yeah, that scene's great.
So yeah, light on the scares, Christine. Direction is great from Carpenter. Um, they shoot the car very well. I think that's the one thing that like, this is like the car is the
Mm-hmm.
movie in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And they photograph the car really well. Um, make it feel like a character. Um, yeah, really good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I don't have a ton of comments on the direction myself, just for the sake of getting through these. And then I would say the legacy. This is the first time where I wouldn't say like no one is gonna have this in their. I don't know. I don't want to say no one, but this is not a movie that. This is kind of
No.
a thing where like if you really like it, you really like it. but it's not cracking like the top 100, like Variety's top 100 horror films of all time. This is not going to
Yeah,
make it on there.
yeah,
So the legacy of this one is kind of propped up on Carpenter's back as like a part of his filmography, where someone who's watching all his movies is inevitably going to come across this and potentially really enjoy it. But outside of that, it doesn't have like a good foothold in the zeitgeist, I would say.
yeah. And I will say, like, despite that, and despite all the shit that I did talk on earlier, like, I love that this exists. It's just such a simultaneously weird but very simple, understandable concept. Just like
Mhm.
a badass car that drives around and just runs over dudes on behalf of somebody else. That I just love that it exists. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Double say, I would say if you're a Carpenter fan, you would enjoy this. Yeah, and then it's also it's on the back of King as well, so you've got that cross section of those two,
Yeah,
where
and
maybe you've read the book and you want to see the movie now.
yeah, and as far as King adaptations go, this is solid, you know,
It's up there for me. Like
for sure.
I recognize that I'm probably higher on this than most. And I recommended this to you because I knew that you had read the book, and I'm a big fan of this. I actually saw this in theaters as well.
You saw
Uh,
Christine in theaters?
yeah,
Ah, that was probably badass. Damn. When was that?
that was last year in September.
I love that you
It's
got those.
it celebrated its 40th last year.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, I would say it's maybe more cult, if anything. Whether this is a master, I would say this is probably not a masterpiece. Um,
I agree
that's
with that.
that said, I do really enjoy it, and I think it's a good movie. All right, so moving into our last one here. Hopefully, we won't keep you guys too much longer. The Witch. Do
The bitch.
you want to talk a bit about why we chose The Witch? You're a Robert Eggers guy. You've seen The Lighthouse and The Northman, right?
I have, and I fucking love it, both of those. Yeah.
Yeah, so this was a blind spot for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead and I'll let you take it away.
The only quick context I have on this is that a few years ago, I started going down just again 2020 2021, catching up on horror movies that I had wanted to see that I hadn't seen yet, and I had watched a few, and then I watched Hereditary, and I was planning on watching The Witch after that, and I watched Hereditary, and Hereditary fucked me up so much that I was like, I'm good for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and stopped, and just never got to watch The Witch, and just didn't want to anymore. But then ended up watching The Lighthouse a couple years later, and then saw The Northman in theaters when it came out, which is great. Not a horror movie. Yeah, yeah.
So
Spoiler alert.
we got the
I did
duality
love
of
The Witch. Yeah, yeah.
we got the duality here.
Okay, okay,
This is a
uh,
divisive movie, I would say. When this came out, it was
okay.
not. It was people either loved it or hated it.
Interesting. Okay, and then last flavored text that I'll put before we get into it. I love a slow movie that really kind of builds out the characters and like the environment and what's going on and takes its time to like get into the meat. Um, I
Mm-hmm.
always love that. So that being said, this really works for me. Um, Definitely a slow burn, but yeah, I very, very much enjoyed this. Yeah.
Nice. I'm glad you dug it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's start out with the characters. The characters here, there's they're purposefully meant to be like these like like you and me have nothing in common with these characters because these characters are from a time period where it's life was just so different that like
Sure.
there's almost no way that you can, I mean, you can relate with them on like a primal human level, But like as far as like what their day to days consist of, like these characters are very far removed from us. Like this is like the 1700s, I want to say.
I think it's a 16. I could be wrong.
It might
My
even be. It might
my
even be.
history
Yeah.
is pretty trash.
We love a slow build that is tension inducing, which does not work. Yeah, some people are just not gonna like that's
Yes.
just not their cup of tea, and that's totally valid.
Yep.
Um, yeah, Ani. This was like one of Anya Taylor Joy's first roles that really broke her
Yeah.
into the zeitgeist, and then it was also Robert Eggers' first film, which he's kind
Damn.
of made his name as like he's one of my favorite working directors. I'm super stoked for like Nosferatu. So like anything the man makes, I'm seeing.
Yep.
And in my opinion, he came out swinging with this movie. Yeah, but like so the characters outside of Anya Taylor Joy, um, they're almost just kind of there to be like kind of terrorized. Like they don't seem to have a ton of agency really. Like things are kind of happening to them. I mean, and they do try to kind of like, the son goes missing and like the kid goes missing and bad shit's just happening to them. And like, despite their best efforts, like they really can't seem to like do anything about it.
Dude, yeah, but like that being said, I feel like they're built out characters. Like, and it takes a while for them all to kind of like get fleshed out, but like
True.
the dad, especially the dad, it takes almost the whole film, but he gets shown to be like at the end, there's a part where he's outside. He might even be chopping wood again, and he's
Mm,
outside after him and his and Thomason. Thomason, right? After they
mhm.
argue, and he thinks he's outside by himself, and he admits like to God that he's like, damn, like I kind of suck, and like I am a victim of my own pride, and like that's what got us out here in the first place, and like maybe if I wasn't so proud and so self-obsessed, then like my family wouldn't be out here in the woods, and we wouldn't be getting fucking terrorized by a
By a
witch right
fucking witch.
now.
Yeah.
And then there's like the mom who's just like she's just a concerned mom, you know, which like uh and she falls victim to that. Unfortunately, at the end, like she thinks that she's really quick to like her two kids who obviously are dead show back up, and she's just like, "Yo, word, my kids are back." And you're like, "No, like no, they're not. You watched one
Mhm.
of them die. You buried him." And that really like again, Hereditary hits on this really well, but like that really hits me where it's just very believable to see a mom just be like throw
It's like
everything out the window and just want to be
that
with their kid.
that maternal kind of drive. All right. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I might have been a bit harsh because the big thing I have going against me here is this movie's not as fresh in my mind as it's going to be for
Mm.
you. For you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So your insight's going to be very valuable here.
I've actually watched this twice too because I felt so.
Yeah,
the,
tell the audience here.
the first night I watched this, I watched it very late at night after work, and I felt that I dozed off for like like 4 minutes in the middle, and then I was like, man, like I feel like I kind of, and then I watched the end, and I was like, okay, and I feel like I kind of had a blind spot, right, where I was like, damn, I was like, how did I forget the older son's name?
I want to say it's Caleb.
Yeah, Caleb. I was like, how did Caleb die? And I was at work, and I was like, I don't know how he died. Let me go back and watch that, and then realized that I missed like the middle 45 minutes of the film, which is like
Arguably the most
the
important
film,
stuff
yeah.
happens there, which
It's
is
like the film.
hilarious.
And so I went back and rewatched. I started a little bit before that, and then watched the whole thing again. So I effectively watched it twice last week, and yeah, and like that too. Like Caleb, like he's a coming of age kid. Some of it's kind of weird where he starts to be like he's kind of like checking out his sister, and he's like, "Let's go with this,"
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
goes into the woods by
But
himself.
he knows it's not okay though. Like
Yeah,
he's like, all right, this is not cool. But like he's just a fucking kid, and back then, like that's what was horny for them. Like
yeah.
they
He's like,
didn't have
"This is all I got."
they didn't
Yeah,
have movies or even books really or like anything. So like it was literally like, what do my animal my fucking what does my monkey brain see
Yeah.
before me, and like, oh, it's my sister's fucking cleavage, which is that's just
Yeah, and he's also completely isolated, so there are no other people around him, and he goes out into
hmm
the woods, very like honorably, where he's like, "All right, I'm gonna go make up for like how we fucked up. I'm gonna get some food,"
yeah,
and then like is seduced by the witch,
hmm
and then so like there's that like where he doesn't just like he's not just like some kid who's not doing anything and then like gets killed. Like he has that whole arc himself, and
yeah.
then.
They're all very well-meaning characters, really.
Yes, and then that only leaves the two young kids, Mercy, which is a crazy name given the context, and I forget the other kid, and they are very interesting because one, they're everybody in here is great acting wise. All the characters are great. A lot of times,
Yeah,
young kids are
Mercy
hit
and
or
Jonas.
miss. Jonas. A lot of times, young kids are kind of hit or miss. I'm sure it's hard to cast like a really good fucking 6 year old, but they're both great.
Yeah, good kid acting here.
They're both great, and you never really find out what's good with them because they're kind of bugging the whole time. Especially Mercy's talking to Black Phillip the whole time,
hmm
and like singing songs about him. And then there's a scene at the end where the dad locks Thomason and Mercy and Jonas in like the goat house, and the three of them had been arguing a lot previous to that over like who's actually a witch and who's not and whatever. And at this point, you're like, okay, like Thomason, we've kind of been watching through her eyes the whole time, so I don't think she is. Mercy and Jonas seem like they were kind of just like fucking around, so I don't think they are. But Thomason just like kind of levels with them, and she's like, "Are you witches?" And they don't say anything, and then Mercy just goes, "Are you?" And Thomason says no. And then that's it. And so they never fucking answer that question. And then they disappear. You never see them get killed. They are very scared when the witch shows up. The witch is great. She's terrifying. And they say something to her and they call her a name that's not Thomason. And I don't know what it is and it's hard to make out, but they refer to her as something different. And then they disappear.
Interesting.
And then they disappear, and you never see what happens to them, and it's never mentioned, and it bugs me out.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
religion is a major theme. I love how it drives each character. During that time, you had to live in accordance with propriety. So, if I'm understanding that comment, basically, um, because everyone was so religious back then, you kind of had to go with the flow, and
mm-hmm.
maybe everyone was religious. Like, I don't think there was people who were like pretending to be, but it was kind of like if you weren't also a Christian, then you were kind of like you were looked at with a side eye. Is that kind of what you mean? I need to look up the definition of propriety because I want to make sure I understand what that word means.
Yeah, I feel like
The,
it was just such a part of society.
the state or quality of conforming to conventionally accepted standards or behavior. Okay, yeah, so that is more or less what you're saying. Yeah, and then that's kind of what gets them kicked out. Can you remind me like what gets them kicked out of their village or whatever? Because that's how the movie begins, is like them getting kicked out.
I wish I could give you a better answer. Like it literally starts off right with that, where they're essentially like in like court, and
Yeah.
I can't remember what he says to them, but like at least like the dad talking at the end makes it seem like it's something that he could have like rectified or just like admitted to be like, okay, like no, never mind, and they would have let him stay
Okay.
because they were planning on going back like midway through. He's like, okay, fine, we'll go back. We'll bring like some vegetables and like a rabbit or something, and they'll let us back in, whatever.
Yeah.
Uh,
So according to Wikipedia, they were banished over a religious dispute.
mm,
Um, I don't know whether that means that Thomason's family was like perhaps not as religious, and that's what got them kicked. I would assume that that's how it would have to had to have happened.
they
Um,
committed something that's like
something
yeah.
that was considered like blasphemous or something. So yeah, I was I think I might need to watch this again because I was kind of quick to write off the characters as kind of like perhaps passive ones where the witch is just kind of enacting things onto them. But no, they're actually a little more layered than I made it out to be. So thank you for correcting me there because it is
They're really
worth
they're really
it's worth pointing that stuff out.
they're really good, and the witch herself is you only see her like 3 times in different forms,
Hmm.
and
Super
dude,
creepy.
so good. Well, she's the first time you see her. Or,
Yeah.
okay,
Okay. Yeah,
yeah. They don't say a whole lot. Um,
that's fine.
I feel like the first time you see the witch, she's technically like a rabbit. You see her in like rabbit form.
Hmm.
Um, I took that to be like that's actually like the witch, and then you see her when Caleb sees her, and
Like
she's
a like a sexy form.
super hot.
Hmm.
And
Preying on his vulnerabilities.
yeah. Well, then you see her when Thomason's like playing with the baby, and you actually see her like running away, and but just like a hooded figure.
Wait, really?
Yeah, you straight up like see like they straight up show that, which is super bugging.
I need to watch this
Um,
fucking movie again. Hold on. I'm gonna
yeah,
reference my letter. Keep talking. I'm gonna reference my
yeah,
letterbox. At, like, when was the last time I watched this? So you're referring to the scene where she's playing peekaboo,
yeah,
opens her eyes, baby's gone, and then the camera pans up to the just the woods.
yeah. I don't think I'm making this up. I'm almost positive that you literally see a hooded figure running away.
No shit.
Somebody please correct me. I don't think I'm making that up, but
I haven't
and
seen this since 2022, so I'm definitely due for a rewatch.
yeah, and then you see her, but then the only time you actually see like the witch in proper form is at the end when she's in the goat house and she's like drinking from the goat, and she turns and laughs, and it's crazy, and that's like burned into my head, and it's really like they were like, okay, you're only gonna see her 1 time, so this has to be it, and it has to be good, and absolutely nailed it.
All
Anyway,
right. Let's move on to mood and
yeah,
atmosphere. Oh shit. Yeah.
yes, all
So
right, cool.
the doubles are the authority on this movie. I'm gonna say because they have some really good insight. So I'm gonna believe them when they say that. Yeah, dude, I don't remember that at all. All I remember is her just cutting up to the woods, and uh, that's it. But I guess.
It's a very wide shot, but
Uh
it's
huh.
obvious, and I feel like that caught me off guard because the movie is like we've talked about, it is a very long burn, it's a very slow burn,
Hmm.
but they established pretty early on where they're like, it's not like, oh, like, is there something weird? Is there a witch? They're like, nah, like, there's a witch. This is her. Watch out. And and to our point about mood and atmosphere now, it kind of like not transcends, but is more similar to a movie like Halloween or Night of the Living Dead than it kind of seems like it is,
Mm.
because now you're like, okay, like there's a family in a secluded house by themselves, and they're being terrorized by this one person who's outside of the house, who's trying to get in and like kill everybody. And
Tear their family apart, preying
yeah,
on
and
like
it's
what each
yeah,
member is of the family is like most susceptible to. Like she
yeah,
kind of changes her form based on like which family member she's trying to kind of tear down and corrupt.
yep,
Creepy fucking shit. Dude,
yeah,
so yeah, the mood and atmosphere of The Witch is insanely good.
yep,
Robert Eggers has gone on to like that's sort of like his like he makes things as authentic as he can, whether it's Lighthouse or The Northman. Like he recreates the period so well, and that's what's got me so excited for
that's
Nosferatu.
cool. I
There
know.
was a news article that came out the other day where they talk about how they lit a lot of the film with just candlelight.
Like
Like they're
Barry
they
Lyndon
get
style.
they get as they do their best. Robert Eggers does his best to recreate the time as it would have looked back
Yeah,
then as he can. Um,
which I love.
it's incredible. Yeah, he's great with setting the right atmosphere. Absolutely. And like kind of similar to like Blair Witch, like the woods are
Mm.
fucking scary, dude. being
Yeah.
out in the woods, especially back then, without the benefit of like modern technology, and also witches are a thing. So like
I'm out. Yeah, no.
but like and it's like it's not even like Blair Witch like where like witches aren't a thing. Like no, witches are a
They
fucking
are.
thing and
Yeah.
they will steal your fucking babies. Like it's fucking crazy, dude. Like it really it is very scary in that like that's where a lot of the dread and scares of the witch comes from is that setting and the isolation that comes from that.
Yeah. That just all of the like there's so much like monotony in it of just like their day to day having to like go out into the fields, milk the goats, and there's just so much time where each character is by themselves
Hmm.
doing something where they're just like invested in what they're doing. They have to do it in order to like survive their day to day, but they're alone, and it's just like you're always just like the sound is great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
agreed. The woods are terrifying. Back during that time, being banished to the woods in the outskirts of town was horrible. Yeah, because back then we like in the 1600s or whatever, like we're not that far removed from like safety in numbers and like um
Mm-hmm. Mm.
if if you're with more people in a big settlement like basically civilization as we know it is starting to emerge at this time. So if you're not a part of that, fucking anything could happen to you. Like you're very
Yeah.
much at the mercy of the elements.
Yeah, yeah, I was gonna say this is definitely out of my wheelhouse here. I wish I don't think Eric's here, so but if he was, he could correct me.
Yeah.
This is early, like early people, like Europeans coming to America.
Hmm.
So like civilization is just a little sliver along the coast, and then
Yeah.
off of that,
Good point, dude.
I don't fucking nobody knows. They're
Yeah.
like, we don't know. Don't go there. We don't know.
Yeah, shit has not been like all the map has not been filled out yet at this point.
No idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Good
So
point, man.
like, yeah, so like that's like that much more terrifying where they're like, we literally have no idea what's over there. Just don't go there.
Creepy stuff, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
so this movie's just shot really well. Um all the scenes like at night are really fucking creepy, like the woods at night, not a place I ever want to be. Yeah, mood and atmosphere 10 out of 10. You're basically left with the elements of nature on your own. Yeah, I mean it's not a place you want to find yourself for sure. You're really it's you against the world. I really like the story. Again, I'm finding a common theme. Some of my favorite horror films, very simple, very simple stories.
Yeah. Yeah, it very much centers on the people. Um uh
We haven't talked much about Thomason yet and how she's kind of all the while everything's playing out, like she's kind of being recruited to the witch. Like
yeah.
as things are happening, she's sort of being like lured in like to the lifestyle of the witch or whatever and like kind of being drawn into it.
Yeah, and it's like her I feel like I can't really speak on this super well, but a lot of it centers around her effectively getting pitted against her mother, which
Hmm.
comes to a head, and she has to like literally she kills her mom at the
Yeah.
end because her mom comes to the conclusion that like all of these problems are coming from Thomason. She's like, you're the cause of this. Like you are the witch, and like you've done this.
Right.
And it's very interesting and very impactful when a film, regardless of like the exterior things that are going on, can bring it back to just like the family unit, and like the core issue becomes like just an issue between members of like direct family, because that's so
That's a big hereditary thing.
yeah, and it's very easy to understand, and it's like so heavy. Like the idea of like being like we've all had trouble with our family members, but the
Hmm.
idea of like having that level of conflict with a very close family member to the point where you're like,
Like literally life and death.
yeah, where you're like, this person's trying to kill me. You're like, I gotta kill this person. Like,
Hmm.
is just so heavy. And then you tack on the layers of like supernatural stuff, and it really that just does something. At least to me, like really, really
Big
hits
time.
me.
No, it's because you're.
Yeah.
If this was just a movie about a family that got, ostracized from the community and had to live out in the wilderness and the family unit crumbles, like take the witch completely out of it. It's still terrifying. The
Yeah.
idea of your mom, trying to have like kill like condemning you and disowning you that's a terrifying notion, you know.
Yeah.
So, and that's a trope where like, or that's a common thing where all the best horror films, if you take the horror component out of it, there's still at least something left that is still scary, and that's like the inner the relationships between the characters.
Yeah, because I feel like that's stronger than the opposite, where like that movie, but if you keep the supernatural element, but it's just like a family and they're all in it together and everything's fine, and they're kind of just getting picked off one by one,
Hmm.
then it's much more one-dimensional than like
Big time.
if there isn't that like family friction kind of thing going on.
Big time. I definitely agree with that, and that's a
Yeah.
good point. We can move on to scares now. um, the big ones that stick out to me are that scene, the scene where the baby gets taken. That shit just kind of leaves you with like, it just leaves you with like a pit, like a icy pit in your stomach. Like if you're an empathetic person and you can imagine like what that would be
Ugh.
like like hey, mom, lost the baby, like that shit, like that. And that's another tie to Hereditary where it's like it plays on real fears,
Yeah.
like things that you can think about, like what if I was in this situation. I can't really think about what it would be like if there was a witch outside my house, but I can
Hmm.
think about what it would be like to lose my fucking little brother or my niece.
Yes.
Like that's fucking scary. And then I also think about the scene where Caleb like dies, and he
Yo,
gives that whole fucking sermon or whatever.
so
Like,
good.
what the
So
fuck?
good.
Like that shit is fucking terrifying.
That kid, yo, he
Real quick, the
uh
tension during that scene is horrible. Yeah, and the baby represents purity in its purest form. To lose that is horrifying. Yeah, the baby had nothing to do. Like it's just a fucking baby, and then that happens. It's really, and that happens early in the film too. And it's like
that sets it off. That's everything's generally aside from being ostracized, everything's fine
that's the
until
inciting
then.
incident, man.
And usually like little kids, let alone babies, are like off limits for
Oh
horror.
yeah,
Like you don't kill the baby or the little kids.
no,
And this movie just starts off with being like, all right, like
dude, this baby gets turned into a paste, and the fucking witch covers herself in it. Like what? This movie's fucked up, dude. This movie's a fucked up movie.
and that's how
Yeah.
it starts, and you're
After
like,
that, everything
yeah,
just crumbles. Yeah. So yeah,
yeah.
but I feel like before I brought that message up, you were about to say something, and I don't want you to lose that.
Um, I think I
With
was just
the
gonna say,
the Caleb scene, I think.
dude, that scene is so important and is so again, like a lot of times the kids actors, you just don't really it's hard to like really you don't know what you're gonna get. And he not like he does that scene so well. And
Hmm.
it's so kind of strange and very
He's almost like
uh
euphoric, dude. Like he's at
yeah,
it's, and that's what's so fucking
very
scary.
peaceful,
To
happy
the
even.
family is like in utter distress,
Yeah.
and he's like given himself over to this witch, and he's so like, so the horror comes from like he's clearly lost it. He's not operating on what he should be, like what we've known him to be as a person. Like we've lost him. Like he's so far gone from us. Like he's not there anymore.
Yeah,
Like he's
even
here, we got him, he's alive, until he's not. But like it's that shit is just fucking scary.
You have that. You have Mercy and Jonas, who are like kicking around and like kind of like mimicking him.
Mm-hmm.
And you still like you don't know if they were just like are they just fucking around
Are they
being like
just little kids?
kids
Yeah. Or are
or
they
was like
actually in
something
on it?
you don't know. It never tells you. And then the dad is going the mom's going crazy naturally,
Mm-hmm.
and the dad is just getting angry because he's like losing control on like his family and like the situation.
He's supposed to be in control as the paternal figure, you know, everything, especially back then, like that's how that
Yeah,
dynamic worked. Like he was the anchor.
yeah,
He's chopping wood. Like if he's not in control, no, like this shit's not going well. Like if he doesn't have a handle on things, then how is anyone else supposed to be expected to hold it together?
yeah. Other only other big scare is the scene where the mom thinks that Caleb and the baby have come back, and she
Oh
goes to like
yeah, like
breastfeed him, and then it cuts to that quick wide shot of her and the crow kind of like nipping at her.
it's like the
And
the crow is like breastfeeding from her.
yeah, and she's like kind of she's so good. She's kind of happy. She's like happy, almost laughing, and then also crying because she's
Yeah,
getting fucking pecked.
that
And you just,
actress Kate Dickey is really good.
dude, that shot, and it's quick. It's like a short shot. They don't linger on it, but
Hmm.
they show you it just enough to drive home what's happening. And ugh, it's rough, man.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
crow scene is fucked up.
yeah,
This is
yeah,
not an easy watch at all.
yeah. No,
It's such a this whole movie is like suffused with dread. All right, we can move on to direction. As I said, Robert Eggers is one of my favorites working today. My ticket is bought ahead of time for anything he does.
yep,
Um, I don't have a ton to add. I feel like a lot of the things we just discussed kind of go hand in hand with this.
yep.
Um,
I
yeah,
did, yeah, I
it's
did
just
read that.
masterfully directed.
I want to say that I read that he did like 4 years of research for this.
He takes that shit
Um,
seriously. Like he really
yeah,
wants to recreate the period as faithfully as he can,
yeah. So I've seen
which
a lot
I really
about,
admire that.
yeah, I've seen a lot about him just going crazy on research to like make sure that he did this justice. And like, I wasn't there, but seems legit. Yeah.
Yeah, so um we can just kind of close it out here. The legacy of this film. This movie's 10 years old. Oh
Wow.
wait, no,
Is it that old?
it's 9. Sorry. It came out in
Still.
2015. So it's going to be 10 years old next year.
Wow.
So this is not a I mean there's a bit of recency bias here, but there's also almost a decade of separation,
Mm-hmm.
which is I feel like where you can start to say like this is a modern masterpiece.
Right. Are we talking about it
Um
still?
People still
All
talk
right.
about this movie, and I think they still will for years to come. Um, I mean, obviously, Robert Eggers is still making films, so like, you know, they can all be traced back to this. This movie has it's divisive, but so many great horror films are. Um, I feel like the legacy is pretty undeniable at this point, and it's only going to continue to get bigger. Is this a modern masterpiece? I don't know. What do you think?
For me, for what I like, yes. Like I will like I'm gonna watch this again. Um I don't rewatch a lot of movies. I wish I did more. I will rewatch it. I effectively did watch this twice within the same week.
Hmm.
Um can I ask what are the common criticisms of this, if you know?
Well, I remember when my mom and like my sisters saw this in theaters back when it came out. They actually saw this movie before I did,
Mm,
and they they didn't like how ambiguous it was, and I think that they were maybe expecting something a little bit more. Um,
like that.
yeah, like not
Mm,
as
sure.
and I don't mean to put down like I don't know their taste super well, but they generally speaking are not into like the same sort of things. Like my mom's the type of person to be like, "Why didn't this happen?" And I'm like, "You're asking all the wrong questions." Like I love my mom. She's
Yeah.
she's
Shout
incredible.
out Amy. Yeah.
But she asks a lot of things like that, and you know,
Okay.
and so using her as sort of like an audience surrogate uh double okay, so yeah, it's slow and boring basically is what I'm getting at. A lot of unresolved questions. Those are the films where you're going to get the divisiveness. Blair Witch is similar where it's like that was boring, nothing happened, and you you
Yeah,
you
yeah,
don't
yeah.
you don't get answers. And that's some people are just not going to like that because they're going to feel like they wasted their time and
Mm-hmm.
they didn't get what they wanted. And that's just you're always going to have that. So yeah, that's just kind of what people dislike, I would say.
Fair. That's my favorite. I love leaving the theater and being like, whoa, like, what was this? What did this mean? And then 6 months later, being on a live stream with somebody and being like, do you know? And then being like, I don't know. That's the best.
Yeah, no, and that's what makes the conversations endure
Yeah.
is when you don't spell everything out because you remove any reason for me to think critically about it. And it's
Yeah,
like
the worst is when you're driving home from the theater and you're already not thinking about
you're
the
talking about
movie.
something else. Yeah.
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
like if the movie's already left your brain,
Yeah.
that's the movie has failed in my opinion because that's
Yeah.
and that's a preference thing, but like that's what I seek to get out of films.
Same.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm looking for an escape. I'm looking for a way to like spend some time, but I also want to have a meaningful I want to have a meaningful time. Like I don't want to
Yeah.
just have nothing going on during that escape. I want to trade whatever's going on in my life for something more interesting
Yeah.
and have really something cool to chew on. And sometimes but also sometimes I want to watch sometimes I want to watch The Mummy or or
Sometimes I do want to watch the movie.
or an Arnold Schwarzenegger film,
Or
you
Jay and
know,
Silent Bob.
with some fucking crazy action. But like when it
Yeah.
comes to movies like this, I'm looking for a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I would probably say that The Witch is a modern masterpiece.
I would say so.
um so yeah, that brings us to the end here. Almost 3 hours in. This is
Holy
easily our
shit.
longest fucking show
Yeah.
by far. But it was really great getting to see all your thoughts on all these movies for the first time.
Good
Um,
list, man.
yeah, they were a little like the first three. There's like a clear theme, and then we kind of like break left on the last two, which I think is great. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Your insights were really valuable, Doubles. So thank you so
Yeah, thanks for
much.
hanging out.
It was great to have you. Yeah, just thank you for your input. It's always great getting input from the chat,
I
especially when it's actually really insightful.
I first became aware of Double Feature Podcast as the time y'all were all on a Buffy live stream
Yeah,
together that
dude.
I listened to. And
Yeah,
I've never
me,
watched any of Buffy, but I was like, I'll get my whole Buffy download by listening to this. It was great.
dude. That was before I even had the YouTube channel.
No, was that long ago?
Yeah, our buddy Tim Talks Talkies put out a
Yep.
story on his Instagram saying, "I'm going to do a stream on Buffy. Who would be interested?" And I didn't have a YouTube channel. I just had Instagram at that point. But I messaged him and I was like, "I could talk all day about Buffy. I've never done anything like that, but I would be down."
That was the first one?
That was it. That was the first one.
No way.
So in a lot of
Wow.
ways, Tim kind of Tim kind of like broke me into it.
That's great.
Yeah, we still have to do that part too. Hopefully, Tim would be down. I would love to do that with you guys. But yeah, it was me, the twins, and Tim, and that was I would
Oh, that's
love to go
crazy.
back and watch that. I feel like I was super nervous for that, but it was a good
Probably.
time.
Oh, that's crazy. I didn't realize it was like so OG.
All right, so we're definitely gonna wind down here and close this out because we're closing in on We're closing in on 3 hours. Thank you so much. That really means a lot. I'm coming up on the 2-year anniversary here, and I still feel like I'm still figuring things out. But I also know that I've learned a lot, and
Yeah.
I've gotten a bit better at doing things. So yeah, I love doing this. It's a great outlet, and having my lifelong friend Tyler here to be a part of it is so cool, and not something that everyone gets. So super
Yeah.
grateful. I don't take any of this for granted. So thank you all for being a part of this. I know this was almost 3 hours. So some of the people who were here earlier, I don't expect anyone to listen to me talk for 3 hours. So
Bro, yeah, no.
I don't begrudge anyone for not sticking around for the whole thing. So I'm grateful if you even come in and leave a message. It's really appreciated. Thank you. Eli's still here. Eli's a real one. He's
What?
been here the whole
Thank
time, I'm
God.
assuming. You have great insight and passion, which is evident. Thank you. If there's one thing I feel like I can talk adequately about, it is movies. So I really appreciate you saying that. All right, so Tyler, you want to say goodnight to the people and kind of close this whole thing out, and maybe tell us a little bit about what you've learned about horror films, if anything, if you can kind of put a nice bow on all of this.
Dude, yeah, I feel like this, especially these first three movies, have given me such like a better foundation of what horror films are, where they've come from, and a much just like clearer lens to look at the future ones through.
Mm,
I wish that I had watched them in this order, which is what I was gonna do originally, but I didn't. Um,
interesting.
but I'm excited to like continue watching horror movies from this point with this new lens. Um, and separately, I don't want to say what it is. I think we've talked about it, but I'm very excited for the next one of these that we'll do in November, our November live stream show. Um,
What did we decide we're doing for that?
bruh.
I'll talk to you after this. I'll talk to you after this. I can't remember right now. It's escaping me.
That's a good one.
Old
Yeah.
Restless, thanks for joining us tonight, man. And thanks for being here the whole time. You guys are awesome. I
Yeah,
really
thank you
I
everybody
really
for
I really
coming.
appreciate you guys. Um
Thanks
yeah,
again.
dude. I'm as a big horror fan, it brings me great satisfaction to see you liking my suggestions. So I'm sure we could even do another one of these next year, and I'll continue to give you suggestions as well. So
Yeah, please do.
all right, man. So thank you everyone so much for being here. If you left a comment or just popped in for a little bit, I really appreciate it. This was a really fun show, the longest one we've ever done. I had a feeling it would be. Introducing all these kind of made things long, but
Yeah,
I also
no, it
think it
worked.
was I think it was helpful for really making sure we did every movie justice. So, uh, thank you so much. Have a happy Halloween. Watch a bunch of scary movies. Uh, take care. And
Watch more movies.
and you say the last part. Okay. All right. See you guys. Good night, everybody.